My sister sent me a wedding invite with an $8,000 attendance fee on top of a mandatory $2,000 gift minimum. When I replied that I was not coming, my mother texted me to pay up or face the consequences. I said nothing. I simply canceled every single invoice I had been secretly paying to keep her luxury wedding afloat. One by one, the high-end vendors began walking away. At 2 in the morning, my sister texted me demanding to know why her dream was falling apart and claiming I owed her. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to a toxic family member who completely underestimated your worth. My name is Rebecca, 33 years old, and I have spent the better part of my adult life building a fortress of success that my family knows absolutely nothing about. Growing up in a standard middle-class suburban home in Ohio, I was always the invisible daughter. My younger sister Ashley, who just turned 28, was the undisputed center of our parents' universe. She was the golden child, the one whose minor achievements were celebrated with lavish dinners, while my major milestones were barely acknowledged with a passing nod. Today, sitting at the expansive solid oak desk in my private downtown office, that lifelong dynamic reached its absolute breaking point. The morning started like any other busy Tuesday. The corporate mail courier had just dropped off a thick stack of envelopes and contracts on my desk. Buried beneath the standard manila folders and priority shipping boxes was an envelope that immediately caught my eye. It was an extravagant, oversized envelope made of heavy cream-colored cardstock sealed with a thick puddle of custom-poured gold wax. The wax bore an intricate monogram of intertwined letters, the initials for Ashley and her fiancé, Brandon. I broke the seal carefully, already anticipating the sheer level of arrogance hiding inside. I slid the contents out onto my desk. The main invitation was a ridiculous display of faux royalty, complete with laser-cut lace edges and gold foil lettering that caught the sunlight streaming through my office windows. It formally invited me to witness the union of two perfect souls at an exclusive botanical estate next month. But it was not the main invitation that made my jaw clench. Tucked behind the RSVP card was a separate crisp white insert with a bold black border. It looked exactly like a commercial invoice. I picked it up and read the elegant looping font. VIP, family seating fee, $8,000. Below that bold demand was an itemized breakdown of what this supposed fee covered. It listed premium placement at the head tables, exclusive access to the bridal suite, for getting ready photos, and a mandatory contribution to the open bar fund. At the very bottom of the card, a polite but incredibly firm note stated that family members occupying these highly coveted VIP seats were expected to contribute a minimum registry gift of $2,000 to help the young couple start their new life in the style to which they were accustomed. I read the words 3 times, letting the sheer audacity of the demand wash over me. $10,000. My sister and my parents were demanding $10,000 simply for the privilege of sitting in a chair and watching her get married. I set the heavy cardstock down on my desk, feeling a strange, cold calm settle in my chest. Years ago, this kind of blatant extortion masked as family obligation would have sent me into a spiral of anxiety. I would have agonized over how to politely decline, terrified of triggering my parents' wrath. But I was no longer the scared, eager-to-please girl they thought I was. I picked up my phone and opened our family group chat. The chat consisted of my mother, Linda, my father, Thomas Ashley, and me. I did not waste time with pleasantries or passive-aggressive questions. I typed a simple, direct message. I just received your wedding invitation, Ashley, but I will not be paying an $8,000 seating fee, nor will I be attending. I wish you and Brandon the best on your big day. I pressed send, locked my phone screen, and tossed the device onto the other side of my desk. I knew exactly what would happen next. I did not even have time to pick up my coffee mug before the phone began vibrating violently against the polished wood. The caller ID flashed with my mother's name. I let it ring 3 times, taking a slow, measured breath before swiping the screen to accept the call. I did not even get the chance to say hello. My mother bypassed any form of greeting, launching immediately into a high-pitched, frantic tirade. "You always ruin your sister's moments." Her voice echoed through the speaker, sharp and accusing. "You have always been jealous of Ashley, and you are doing this just to spite her. You refused to co-sign her car loan when she was 18, forcing your father and me to dip into our retirement savings just so she could have a reliable vehicle for college. Now you are being cheap when she needs you most. Pay the invoice, Rebecca." I leaned back in my leather executive chair, listening to the familiar rewriting of history. I had refused to co-sign that loan because I was a struggling college student paying my own way, while they handed Ashley everything on a silver platter. "I am not paying $8,000 for a chair, Mom," I said, keeping my tone perfectly flat and devoid of emotion. "You rent folding chairs for a living, Rebecca," my mother snapped. Referencing the fake low-level career, I let them believe I had to keep them from asking me for money. "You could at least take out a personal loan for your own sister. Do you have any idea how much pressure we are under right now? Brandon's family from Austin is old money. They are practically royalty in Texas commercial real estate. They expect a certain level of sophistication. What exactly do you think his mother Diane will say when she sees the bride's own biological sister sitting in the cheap seats at the back, or worse, not there at all? They will think we are uncultured peasants. They will think our family is completely broke." The irony of her statement was almost too heavy to bear. My parents were so obsessed with maintaining the illusion of immense wealth to impress Brandon's family that they were willing to extort their oldest daughter to fund the facade. "If you are that worried about what Brandon's mother thinks of your finances," I replied calmly, "perhaps you should not be hosting a wedding you cannot actually afford." I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by the sound of the phone changing hands. My father Thomas had taken the receiver. His voice was completely different from my mother's frantic tone. It was low, menacing, and dripping with the kind of authoritative disappointment he had used to control me my entire life. "Listen to me very carefully, Rebecca," my father growled. "We are not playing these childish games with you today. You are going to transfer that $8,000 to your sister's account by the end of the business day. You are going to buy a dress that does not embarrass us in front of the Austin elite, and you are going to sit exactly where we tell you to sit and smile for the cameras. You owe this family your loyalty after everything we sacrificed to raise you." I stared at the gold-foiled invitation on my desk, tracing the intricate crest with my eyes. What exactly did I owe them? They had forced me to move out of the house the week I turned 18, just so Ashley could tear down the wall between our bedrooms and have a massive walk-in closet. They had skipped my college graduation because Ashley had a minor cheerleading competition the exact same weekend. They had never once supported my ambitions, constantly telling me that my business ideas were a waste of time and that I was destined to be the family failure. "If you do not pay this invoice today," my father continued, his voice dropping into a cold, final ultimatum, "you are cut out of this family permanently. We will block your number. We will not invite you to holidays, and you will no longer be considered our daughter. Do not ever call us again until you are ready to apologize and pay what you owe." For a brief, fleeting second, the ghost of the desperate little girl inside me wanted to apologize, to scramble for a way to keep the peace and beg for their scraps of affection. But that girl had been dead for a very long time. In her place was a woman who had built an empire from the ground up, a woman who knew her exact worth down to the last decimal point. I did not argue with him. I did not raise my voice, and I certainly did not cry. I simply pressed the red end call button, cutting my father off mid-sentence. The sudden silence in my office was beautiful. I placed the phone face down next to the ridiculous $8,000 invoice. I took a deep breath, feeling the last remaining threads of familial obligations snap and dissolve into thin air. I opened my laptop, the screen illuminating my calm expression. I brought up my web browser and navigated directly to my enterprise administrative portal, preparing to show them exactly what happens when you try to extort the person secretly holding up your entire world. The glowing screen of my laptop illuminates the dark mahogany of my desk. The dashboard header spells out the absolute truth my parents and my sister have willfully ignored for years. Lux Venues and Catering Enterprise Administrator Portal. My family genuinely believes I operate a dusty, rundown warehouse on the industrial edge of town, renting out cheap plastic folding chairs and stained polyester tablecloths for neighborhood block parties. They love to mock my career at family dinners. They love to introduce me to their pretentious country club friends as the family tradeswoman, always accompanied by a condescending pat on the arm and a sympathetic sigh. They have absolutely no idea that I am the sole founder and chief executive officer of the premier luxury event group in the entire state. I started this company with nothing but a small business loan and a relentless drive to prove them wrong. Over the past decade, I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into building an enterprise that caters to the highest echelons of society. While my family was busy treating me like a complete disappointment, I was busy quietly purchasing the very real estate they now desperately want to show off to their future in-laws. I do not just rent chairs. I own the exclusive supply chains. I own the high-end catering kitchens. I employ a dedicated staff of over 200 people. Most importantly, I legally own the Emerald Conservatory, the sprawling glass-enclosed botanical estate where Ashley is scheduled to be married in exactly 4 weeks. I navigate the complex administrative software, clicking past the lucrative corporate event bookings and high-profile celebrity charity galas until I reach the private bridal accounts. I type my sister's name into the search bar. The file immediately opens, displaying a massive, meticulously curated event profile. The total cost at the bottom of the screen is visually staggering: $150,000. I slowly scroll through the itemized list that I personally approved. Imported white orchids flown in overnight from Holland to drape spectacularly from the glass ceiling. Custom velvet draped seating for 200 distinguished guests. A premium Wagyu beef and fresh Maine lobster carving station. A towering 7-tier artisan wedding cake wrapped entirely in edible gold leaf. I had overseen every single luxurious detail of this magnificent production. Then I had manually overridden the automated billing system to zero out the entire balance. I did this because 6 months ago my father Thomas came directly to my actual corporate office. He bypassed my receptionist, closed my heavy oak door, and practically fell to his knees in front of my desk. He confessed that he was completely drowning in massive, unmanageable debt. He told me that Brandon's family, the wealthy real estate dynasty from Austin, expected a wedding fit for absolute royalty. He was terrified they would discover his finances were nothing but a fragile house of cards built on empty credit and false promises. He begged me to comp the venue, the gourmet food, the service staff, and the extravagant decor. He swore to me with literal tears in his eyes that he would pay me back every single cent when his next supposed business deal finally closed. He pleaded with me to keep it a strict secret from my mother and Ashley so he could maintain his foolish pride and his image as the wealthy, capable provider. Like an absolute fool, still desperately craving her father's validation and blindly hoping to finally earn my rightful place in the family, I agreed. I applied a 100% family courtesy discount to the entire monumental production. Carrying his financial burden had felt like a crushing weight on my chest for half a year. I had compromised my own business ethics and sacrificed my profit margins just to buy a fraction of my father's approval. I had convinced myself that this massive gesture would finally make them see my worth. I thought saving them from absolute public humiliation would earn me a seat at the table. Instead, they literally tried to charge me $8,000 for that very seat. Now, sitting alone in my quiet office, staring at the physical demand for $8,000 just to occupy a single chair at a table, I was quietly paying for the illusion of family loyalty, shatters completely. The sheer, unadulterated disrespect burns away the last remaining remnants of my misplaced guilt. I move my cursor over the active discount code applied to Ashley's account. A prompt appears on the screen, a small gray warning box asking if I am absolutely certain I want to remove the promotional pricing and revert to standard corporate billing. Hovering over that confirmation button brings back a visceral, sickening memory from 14 years ago. I clearly remember standing at my university bursar office on a crisp autumn morning, proudly handing the clerk my student identification card to finalize my sophomore year registration. The clerk looked at her screen, frowned in confusion, and told me my tuition account was completely empty. I had rushed back to my childhood home in an absolute panic, genuinely thinking there had been a terrible bank error. My parents sat me down in our pristine living room and casually, almost happily explained that they had deliberately diverted my entire college savings account to fund Ashley's sudden impulsive desire to take a gap semester in Paris. They claimed she desperately needed the cultural exposure to find her true calling before starting college. When I cried asking how I was supposed to pay for my own education, my mother simply rolled her eyes. She told me to take out high-interest student loans and stop being so incredibly dramatic. She coldly stated that I was smart enough to figure it out on my own, while Ashley needed the financial support to truly thrive. Ashley ended up spending 4 months partying across Europe, failing the few language classes she actually enrolled in, and coming home with a designer wardrobe bought entirely with my tuition money. They literally stole my future to fund her extravagant vacation and expected me to smile and thank them for the character-building experience. I spent the next 3 years working grueling night shifts at a local diner just to keep myself enrolled while my parents bought Ashley a brand new luxury sedan as a welcome home present. My finger presses down firmly on the mousepad. I click the remove button. The administrative screen buffers for a fraction of a second before the financial software executes the command. The bold green zeros at the bottom of the invoice vanish instantly. They are immediately replaced by bold, unforgiving red numbers, balance. Due $150,000. I click the next tab to finalize the account update. The system requires no further input from me. It automatically generates a revised, highly detailed invoice reflecting the true market cost of the opulent event. I watch the green progress bar zip across the bottom of my screen as the automated email is dispatched directly to Ashley's primary email address with mandatory carbon copies automatically sent to my father and mother. I know exactly what that automated message says. The subject line reads, "Invoice updated." The body of the text clearly states balance due $150,000. Payment required in full within 48 hours to secure venue reservation. Failure to remit payment will result in immediate cancellation of all services. I do not feel a single ounce of regret or hesitation. I close my laptop, the sudden click echoing loudly in the quiet office space. I pack my leather briefcase, walk out to my car, and drive home through the peaceful city streets. I go through my normal evening routine without a second thought. I make a warm cup of herbal tea, wash my face, and climb into my comfortable bed. For the first time in 6 months, the heavy, suffocating weight of my family's toxic financial secrets is entirely gone. I fall asleep almost instantly, enjoying a deep, dreamless rest completely unburdened by the chaos I have just unleashed. Then at exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone begins to vibrate violently against my wooden nightstand. The harsh, persistent buzzing cuts through the silent room like a buzzsaw. The screen lights up, casting a stark white glow across the bedroom ceiling, flashing with back-to-back missed calls. I pick up the device, squinting against the bright light. The notification center is completely flooded with frantic text messages. Ashley's name appears over and over again in rapid, desperate succession. "Call me right now," she typed. "What is this email? The venue just sent me a bill for $150,000. Tell me this is a joke. Call me back, Rebecca." My mother's name pops up right beneath hers, her messages equally hysterical. "Answer your phone immediately. Your sister is hyperventilating on the floor. There is a glitch with the venue billing system. Fix this right now. You owe me this wedding." Ashley types in a massive block of frantic text. "Brandon's mother is going to see this invoice and call off the whole thing. You work in the industry, you need to call whoever is in charge and fix this computer glitch right now. I am not losing my dream wedding because of some stupid error. You better answer your phone right now." I stare at the glowing screen, watching their absolute panic unfold in real time. They still think I am just a lowly employee who can pull some strings. They still think they hold all the power. They have absolutely no idea that I am the one who pulled the plug, and I have absolutely no intention of plugging it back in. I set my phone to silent, place it face down on the nightstand, and close my eyes, ready to face the absolute firestorm they will bring to my doorstep tomorrow. I smile into the darkness, knowing that the empire I built with my own two hands is about to teach them a lesson they will never forget. The buzzing of the phone against the solid mahogany nightstand is relentless. It rattles the quiet sanctuary of my bedroom, a mechanical, angry heartbeat that refuses to stop. I let it ring. The screen goes dark for a fraction of a second before illuminating again. Ashley is nothing if not incredibly persistent when she wants something. I slowly sit up, pushing the heavy-down comforter aside. The digital clock on my dresser reads exactly 2:14 in the morning. I take a slow sip of water from the glass on my nightstand, feeling the cool liquid slide down my throat, grounding me in the present reality. I pick up the vibrating phone and swipe the green icon, bringing the device to my ear. I do not say hello. I do not ask what is wrong. I simply listen. Ashley's voice explodes through the tiny speaker, high-pitched and bordering on absolute hysteria. "Rebecca, you need to wake up right now. Are you listening to me? Wake up!" Her breath hitches, the sound of genuine raw panic tearing through her usually perfectly curated vocal fry. There is a massive glitch in the venue billing system. I just got an automated corporate email saying our balance is $150,000 and the whole reservation will be canceled in 48 hours if it is not paid in full. Do you hear me? Canceled. I lean back against the padded headboard, staring at the shadows dancing across my ceiling. I hear the frantic tapping of her acrylic nails against a hard surface in the background. She is likely pacing the hardwood floors of her luxury apartment, the exact one our parents took out a second mortgage to help her secure. I let her panic breathe for a moment, letting the silence stretch until she practically shrieks my name again. "Rebecca, say something right now. This is a complete disaster. You work in the event industry. You rent out those cheap chairs and ugly tents for those awful suburban block parties. You have to know someone who works at luxe venues and catering. You have to call their corporate office right now and get this fixed. Tell them their computer system is broken. Tell them they are making a massive mistake and that Brandon's family will completely ruin their reputation in this town if they do not fix this invoice immediately." The sheer entitlement radiating through the phone is physically staggering. She honestly believes the world bends to her will simply because she exists. She does not ask if I am okay. She does not apologize for waking me up in the middle of the night. She demands that the older sister she just tried to maliciously extort for $8,000 magically fix a six-figure problem. "I am not calling anyone at 2 in the morning, Ashley," I say, my voice perfectly level and entirely devoid of any sympathy. It is an automated invoice. It means exactly what it says. You have a balance due. You should probably figure out how to pay it before the deadline. There is a sharp gasp on the other end of the line. The sound of shuffling follows a brief, angry scuffle, and then a new voice takes over the receiver. It is my mother, Linda, and she is absolutely furious. "Rebecca Elaine, what is wrong with you?" My mother snaps her words, clipping together with venomous speed. "Your sister is practically having a nervous breakdown on her living room floor, and you are being completely unhelpful. Why are you bringing this terrible energy to her wedding week? You always do this. You always find a way to drag her down with your negativity just when she is supposed to be celebrating her milestones." I keep the phone pressed to my ear, my face completely expressionless in the dark. My mother is projecting, spinning a wild narrative, where my refusal to panic alongside them automatically makes me the villain of the story. "This is not a joke," Rebecca Linda continues, her voice rising in pitch and desperation. "Ashley is marrying into a real estate dynasty. Brandon's family is incredibly important, and this wedding has to go off without a single flaw. Why can you not problem solve like your sister? She is trying to build a solid future. She is trying to secure her rightful place in society. And you are just sitting there being deliberately difficult. You work in this exact field. You know how these complicated venue contracts operate. You need to get out of bed, open your laptop, and find a private contact number for whoever runs that venue. I listened to her demand that I leverage my supposed low-level connections to save the daughter she fiercely favors. It is a masterclass in emotional manipulation, a toxic tactic she has honed over 3 long decades. Do not think I do not know what you are doing, Rebecca. Linda pushes forward, not waiting for my response. You are being stubborn out of pure spite because of that seating fee invoice. You are letting your petty jealousy cloud your judgment. You are acting exactly like you did back in high school. Do you remember that? Do you remember how incredibly selfish you were when Ashley got accepted into that elite summer cheer camp? I closed my eyes tight, letting the bitter memory she just weaponized wash over me. I was 18 years old. I had worked after school for 2 straight years, bagging groceries and dealing with awful customers, saving every single dollar to fund a graduation trip to Washington, D.C. with my history club. It was my only dream, my only reward for maintaining straight-A grades while living in a house that barely noticed I existed. A week before my trip, Ashley decided she desperately wanted to attend a prestigious, wildly expensive cheerleading camp in Florida. My parents did not have the money, so they demanded I hand over my hard-earned savings. When I said no, when I stood my ground and refused to surrender the money, I had literally bled, for my mother called me a selfish monster. She told me I was destroying my sister's potential out of pure spite. They grounded me, took away my phone, and made my life a living nightmare until I finally broke down and handed them the cash. Ashley went to Florida. I stayed home and worked double shifts. You refused to give up that ridiculous little graduation trip, Linda sneers through the phone, pulling me back to the present reality. You were so incredibly stubborn, so completely unwilling to support your own sister's dreams. Your father and I had to beg you to do the right thing for this family. We had to force you to see the bigger picture. And here you are doing the exact same thing again. You are refusing to help her when her entire future is on the line. You need to grow up, Rebecca. You need to stop punishing Ashley just because she is succeeding where you failed. The silence that follows her harsh outburst is heavy and thick. I can hear her breathing hard on the other end of the line. I can hear Ashley sobbing dramatically in the background, playing the victim with award-winning precision. They are waiting for me to crack. They are waiting for me to apologize, to scramble out of bed, to promise them I will use my meager industry contacts to investigate this terrible glitch. They expect the invisible daughter to fall back into line and absorb their massive panic. I swing my legs over the edge of the bed. My bare feet hit the cool hardwood floor. I walk over to the large bay window overlooking the quiet, dark street. The neighborhood is completely still, blissfully unaware of the absolute chaos unfolding through this cellular connection. I look at my reflection in the dark glass. I do not look like the scared teenager who handed over her savings. I do not look like the exhausted college student who worked night shifts because her tuition was stolen. I look like a woman who holds the fate of their entire social standing in the palm of her hand. Mom, I say, my voice slicing through the thick tension like a perfectly sharpened blade. Yes, she answers quickly, expecting the surrender, expecting the blind compliance she feels so entirely entitled to. There is no glitch, I state with ice-cold precision. What are you talking about? Linda asks, her tone faltering for the very first time. Ashley said the computer system must have made a mistake. There is absolutely no mistake. I continue enunciating every single word, so there is zero room for misunderstanding. The invoice Ashley received is completely accurate. The venue is not experiencing a system error. The billing department simply removed a private, manually applied courtesy discount. I hear the rapid rustling of the phone, and suddenly Ashley is back on the line, her fake tears instantly replaced by vicious confusion. What do you mean, a courtesy discount? I never had a discount. Brandon's parents gave Dad the cash to secure the venue 6 months ago. Dad paid the venue in full. It was already taken care of. The ugly revelation hangs in the air. Brandon's wealthy parents had given my father the cash to pay for the venue, and my father had quietly pocketed the money, begging me to comp the space so he could use those funds to cover his own massive debts. He had lied to the wealthy in-laws. He had lied to Ashley. He had lied to everyone, using my multi-million-dollar company as his personal shield. I let out a soft, humorless laugh that echoes in my empty bedroom. Dad never paid a single dime, Ashley. He came to my private office and begged for a handout. He begged me to cover the entire cost of your luxury venue so he would not look like a complete fraud in front of your precious new family. Your office. Ashley scoffs, her voice dripping with venomous disbelief. You work out of a dirty storage unit, Rebecca. You do not own a luxury venue. I own luxe venues and catering. I say the heavy words falling from my lips like stones. I own the Emerald Conservatory. I own the catering company you hired. I own the floral distribution center handling your imported orchids. I am the chief executive officer of the company hosting your wedding. And for 6 months, I subsidized your entire $150,000 party because our father begged me to save his pathetic reputation. The silence on the line is absolute and deafening. I can almost hear their minds desperately trying to process the information, trying to reconcile the sister they treat like garbage with the multimillionaire who actually owns the ground they plan to walk on. The cognitive dissonance must be staggering for them both. You wanted me to pay $8,000 for my seat, I say, delivering the final devastating blow. Now you have to pay for yours. You have 48 hours to remit the balance in full, or I am canceling the entire event. I pull the phone away from my ear, hit the red button, and turn the device entirely off. I toss it onto the plush armchair in the corner of my bedroom. The silence returns absolute and unbroken. I climb back into my warm bed, pulling the comforter up to my chin. Tomorrow the fallout will be spectacular. Tomorrow they will come for me. But tonight I am doing exactly what I promised myself I would do. I am sleeping soundly, completely untethered from their manufactured disasters, knowing that for the first time in my entire life, I am the one holding all the cards. The morning sun hits the glass facade of the high-rise as I step out of my car. I hand my keys to the valet and walk through the revolving doors. My heels click rhythmically against the marble lobby. I press the button for the penthouse level, riding the executive elevator to Luxe Venues and Catering. When the doors open, I am greeted by the quiet hum of a perfectly oiled corporate machine. The reception area is massive and modern, featuring a living moss wall and white leather seating designed for high-net-worth clients. My assistant Sarah hands me an espresso and my printed schedule. I thank her and walk down the corridor to my corner office. My personal workspace is absolutely massive, wrapped entirely in expansive windows offering an unobstructed sweeping skyline view. It is a room built specifically for a chief executive officer, completely contradicting the sad narrative my family clings to. They have never actually visited my office. They always claimed they were far too busy with Ashley to endure the drive downtown to see my supposed dusty little rental warehouse. I sit at my desk, log into my computer, and take a sip of coffee. I know they will come looking for blood. The only question is how long it will take them to navigate the morning traffic. It takes exactly 47 minutes. I am reviewing a catering contract for a charity gala when I hear a sharp commotion echoing down the serene hallway. The heavy glass doors swing open with aggressive force. I hear the instantly recognizable voice of my mother echoing off the ceiling panels. I hear Sarah politely asking them if they have an appointment. My mother completely ignores her. I hear the stomping of 2 pairs of designer heels marching down the corridor. They do not pause to admire the artwork. They do not register the corporate employees working in the glass-enclosed conference rooms. They are blinded by self-righteous fury. My solid oak door flies open, hitting the wall with a thud. Linda and Ashley physically storm into the room, their faces flushed with rage and sheer exhaustion. Ashley looks terrible, her pristine makeup smeared underneath her eyes, her designer clothes rumpled from pacing her apartment all night. My mother looks equally unhinged, gripping her leather handbag so tightly her knuckles are white. They march up to my desk, bringing a cloud of toxic energy into my calm sanctuary. They look around the massive office, but their arrogant minds simply refuse to process what they are seeing. In their reality, I am just a low-level event planner who rents a shared desk in a fancy building to look successful. They are entirely incapable of comprehending that my name is on the commercial lease for this entire floor. What exactly do you think you are doing? Rebecca, my mother demands, slamming her hands flat onto my polished desk. Her voice is shrill, vibrating with an entitled anger. I have been calling you for 7 hours straight. Your sister has been crying so hard she literally threw up her breakfast. We have a massive crisis on our hands, and you are sitting here sipping coffee in this shabby little event rental office, like you do not have a single care in the world. I look at her calmly, folding my hands neatly on top of the catering contract. I do not have a crisis, Mom, I state evenly. You have an unpaid venue invoice. There is a very distinct difference. Ashley takes a step forward, her eyes narrowed into thin, dangerous slits. She completely ignores my statement, opting instead to dive straight into the ridiculous solution they undoubtedly spent the entire car ride concocting. You need to call your bank immediately, Ashley commands, her voice shaking with raw desperation. You own that house in the suburbs. You have good credit because you never spend money on anything fun or important. You are going to call your mortgage lender right now and take out a second mortgage on your house. You are going to pull out $150,000 in cash, and you are going to wire it directly to the venue to fix this absolute nightmare. My mother nods vigorously in agreement, as if demanding her eldest daughter mortgage her home to pay for a party is completely logical. Your father is tapped out, Linda adds, her tone fiercely manipulative. He stretched his finances to the absolute breaking point to give Ashley the wedding of her dreams. Brandon's family is expecting perfection. If we cancel the venue now, we will be a public laughingstock. You are going to take out the loan, Rebecca. We are family, and family cleans up each other's messes. I stare at them, genuinely marveling at their audacity. They want me to jeopardize my home, the sanctuary I paid for with my own money. I lean back in my chair, keeping my breathing slow and steady. I am not taking out a second mortgage to pay for your wedding, Ashley, I reply softly. That is financially irresponsible, and it is completely out of the question. Ashley lets out a cruel laugh that sounds like breaking glass. Irresponsible, she mocks, tossing her hair over her shoulder. What exactly are you saving your precious house for, Rebecca? You do not need money for a wedding anyway. It is not like anyone is going to marry you. Let us be brutally honest here. You are 33 years old. You work constantly. You have absolutely zero social life. You are going to end up a lonely, bitter spinster renting out cheap folding chairs until you finally and eventually retire. I do not need the money for a fantasy, but I am actually getting married. I am marrying into a real estate dynasty. Just take out the loan. Brandon will leave me if he finds out my family is broke. His mother Diane will force him to call off the engagement if we cannot afford to secure the venue. You have no idea what it is like to have a man of that caliber expecting things from you. Just take out the stupid loan and save my life. Her words are designed to slice deep, hitting the insecurities they have spent my life nurturing. She throws my single status in my face like a weapon. It reminds me of how my parents constantly told me I needed to focus on being useful because I lacked Ashley's natural charm. They conditioned her to believe her romantic value made her inherently superior to me, and that my only purpose was to serve as a stepping stone for her success. I look at my sister, watching the desperate panic twisting her features. She is entirely dependent on a man's wealth for validation, terrified that the illusion of her status will shatter. I feel absolutely nothing for her. My answer is no. I say, my voice ringing with finality. I am not giving you a single dime. You and Dad created this massive financial lie. Figure out how to pay the invoice yourselves or lose the venue. The choice is entirely yours, but my bank accounts are completely closed to this family. Ashley's face turns a blotchy red. The panic in her eyes instantly morphs into pure malice. She realizes her tactics are failing. She takes a sudden step back, reaching into her designer handbag. She pulls out her smartphone thumbs, moving furiously as she unlocks it. You think you can walk away from me? Ashley sneers, her voice dropping into a threatening whisper. You think you can ruin my life and return to your pathetic business like nothing happened? Fine. If you will not give me the money, I will make sure you lose everything else. She holds the phone up the camera lens pointed directly at my face. You remember Grandma's estate, do you not, Rebecca? You remember how the money from the sale of her house was supposed to be divided evenly among all the grandchildren. I watch her carefully, keeping my expression entirely blank. Our grandmother passed away 5 years ago, leaving almost nothing behind her. There was no secret money. But Ashley smiles a calculating smile. I am going to start recording right now, Ashley threatens, waving the device in the air. I am going to post a fabricated story online claiming you stole from our late grandmother's estate to fund your pathetic little business. I am going to tell my followers, Brandon's family friends, and everyone in this city that you are a thief who abuses her own family. People love a tragic victim, Rebecca, and they will tear your reputation to shreds. How many cheap plastic chairs do you think you will be able to rent out when the internet thinks you stole from a dying old woman? Give me the money for the venue right now, or I press post and ruin your life forever. My sister's thumb hovered directly over the publish button on her screen. Her eyes danced with a vicious, triumphant delight, fully believing she had backed me into an inescapable corner. She took a breath, ready to launch her fabricated, tearful monologue to her thousands of followers. But before a single word could leave her lips, the heavy glass doors of my executive suite swung open for the second time that morning. The sudden noise caused Ashley to jump, nearly dropping her phone. My mother spun around, her face instantly draining of all color. Standing in the doorway, framed by the bustling corporate activity of my outer office, was Brandon. And right beside him stood his mother, Diane. Diane was the undisputed matriarch of the Austin real estate dynasty. She was a woman who commanded rooms simply by stepping into them, wrapped in a pristine cream-colored cashmere coat and dripping in understated generational wealth. Her posture was rigidly perfect, her gaze sharp and calculating. Brandon stood slightly behind her, looking thoroughly embarrassed and highly uncomfortable, twisting the heavy gold watch on his left wrist. The transformation in my sister was instantaneous and absolutely nauseating to witness. The vicious, snarling extortionist vanished in a microsecond. In her place stood a fragile, overwhelmed, innocent bride-to-be. Ashley immediately shoved her phone deep into her designer handbag, her features softening into a mask of pure distress as she practically threw herself across the room toward her fiancé. "Brandon," she whimpered, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. "What are you doing here? I thought you were at the golf club with your father." Brandon gently pulled her arms away, his expression tight. "My mother received an automatic alert from our family accounting office this morning," he said, his voice flat and strained. The alert was flagged as a critical vendor cancellation warning. Diane stepped fully into my office, her expensive leather heels clicking sharply against the floor. She did not look at me. She did not even acknowledge my presence behind the desk. Her piercing gaze locked entirely onto my mother, who was currently trembling so hard I could see the fabric of her blouse shaking. "Linda," Diane began, her voice smooth but laced with absolute steel. "I was under the very distinct impression that the venue for the ceremony had been fully secured 6 months ago. Brandon's father and I wired Thomas the capital specifically for that exact purpose. So you can imagine my sheer surprise when my wealth manager woke me up at 6 o'clock this morning to inform me that an outstanding balance of $150,000 had just been generated for the Emerald Conservatory." My mother looked like she was about to pass out. She opened her mouth, but only a dry, wheezing sound came out. Diane slowly removed her leather gloves, her eyes narrowing as she waited for an explanation. The silence in the room was thick, suffocating, and incredibly satisfying. "I received a copy of an automated email stating the entire reservation will be canceled in 48 hours. Diane continued, stepping closer to my mother. "Now we are flying in 300 guests from Texas. We have senators and chief executive officers attending this event. I am certainly not going to be humiliated by a venue cancellation 4 weeks before the ceremony. I need to know exactly where our money went, Linda, and I need to know right now. My mother's survival instincts finally kicked in, driven by sheer, unadulterated panic. She plastered a sickeningly sweet, entirely false smile across her pale face and let out a high-pitched artificial laugh that echoed awkwardly off the walls of my office. Diane, please do not worry yourself over this. My mother practically begged, stepping forward with her hands clasped together in a pleading gesture. It is a complete misunderstanding. It is nothing more than a ridiculous clerical error. You know how these massive venues operate. They rely on automated computer systems that constantly generate the wrong invoices. Our funds are perfectly safe. Thomas handled the transfer personally. Diane did not look convinced. She crossed her arms, her diamond rings catching the morning light. A $150,000 clerical error is not a minor oversight, Linda. That level of incompetence is unacceptable for a luxury venue. Have you spoken to their management? My mother nodded frantically, grasping at the lifeline Diane had unintentionally thrown her. Yes, absolutely. That is exactly why Ashley and I are here this morning. She turned slightly, gesturing vaguely in my direction, while deliberately blocking Diane's view of my actual desk. We are here dealing with the event staff. The venue employs some very incompetent, low-level administrative workers who clearly do not know how to manage a basic ledger. We are just sorting out the paperwork now. It will be completely cleared up by this afternoon. You have my absolute word. Ashley chimed in instantly, sensing her mother's desperate pivot and eagerly playing along. Yes, Diane, it has been such a stressful morning. We drove all the way down to this terrible little office district just to fix their stupid computer glitch. The venue staff is completely useless. The sheer audacity of their lie was almost impressive. They were standing in my multi-million-dollar corporate headquarters, surrounded by my employees, looking at my custom mahogany desk, and they were still committed to treating me like a glorified secretary. They were so deeply entrenched in their own delusional reality that they truly believed they could talk their way out of a six-figure theft by blaming the invisible daughter. Diane finally turned her attention toward me. She looked at me from head to toe, her eyes sweeping over my tailored blazer and the neat stacks of corporate contracts on my desk. Her expression was completely devoid of respect. She saw exactly what my mother and sister wanted her to see. A hired hand, a nameless, faceless administrative assistant who was entirely responsible for ruining her morning. Well, Diane said, her tone dripping with aristocratic condescension. If you are the one responsible for this billing disaster, I strongly suggest you get on the phone with your supervisors immediately and rectify the situation. My family does not tolerate incompetence. I sat perfectly still, keeping my hands folded neatly on my desk. I looked directly into Diane's eyes, refusing to shrink under her withering gaze. I did not speak. I simply let her arrogance fill the space between us. My silence clearly agitated the matriarch. She let out an exasperated sigh, waving her hand dismissively in my direction. While you figure out how to do your job and fix this ridiculous invoice, you can make yourself useful, Diane commanded. Fetch me a glass of sparkling water, with lemon, not lime. And get one for my son as well. We are going to be here a while sorting out your massive mistake, and the adults need to talk privately. To punctuate her demand, Diane raised her right hand and snapped her fingers directly at me. The sharp, cracking sound of her fingers snapping echoed in my office. It was a sharp, biting noise that sliced through the air and instantly paralyzed the muscles in my back. In a fraction of a second, I was transported back in time. I was not sitting in my executive suite. I was standing in the sprawling backyard of my childhood home. I was 23 years old, working 50 hours a week to build my first business, exhausted and deeply in debt. It was the weekend of Ashley's sweet 16th birthday party. My parents had spent a small fortune catering a lavish outdoor event for 70 demanding teenagers. To save money on staffing, my mother had forced me to wear a stiff black polo shirt and carry a silver tray. For 5 agonizing hours, I was forbidden from mingling or sitting down. I was ordered to weave through crowds of my sister's snobby high school friends, serving them brightly colored mocktails and collecting their dirty napkins. Every time a glass ran empty, my mother or father would look across the manicured lawn, lock eyes with me, and sharply snap their fingers to summon me like an obedient dog. They had reduced me to a servant in my own family, happily sacrificing my basic dignity to elevate their golden child. The visceral memory washed over me, burning hot and intense, but it faded just as quickly as it had arrived. I blinked, returning to the present moment. I looked at Diane, whose hand was still suspended in the air, expecting me to jump up and scurry away to fetch her carbonated beverage. I looked at my mother, who was glaring at me silently, ordering me to play the part of the lowly subordinate. And I looked at Ashley, who wore a tiny triumphant smirk, thrilled that her wealthy future mother-in-law was putting me in my rightful place. I did not fetch the water, I did not stand up, I did not break eye contact. Instead, I smoothly reached over to the polished brass handles of my bottom desk drawer. The heavy wood slid open silently. I reached inside and pulled out a thick leather-bound folder bearing the gold-embossed logo of my enterprise. I placed it squarely in the center of my desk and opened the cover. Inside rested the original master venue contract for the Emerald Conservatory, the exact document my father had desperately signed 6 months ago when he begged me to save his life. I calmly picked up the heavy stack of premium legal paper, leaned forward, and dropped the contract directly onto the center of the glass coffee table, separating me from my stunned audience. The thick document hit the glass with a loud, authoritative slap that instantly commanded the room. "There is no glitch, Diane," I said, my voice ringing with total, unshakable authority. "And there are no incompetent staff members for my mother to blame. I suggest you take a very close look at the bottom of the final page." Diane blinked, completely taken aback by my sudden shift in tone. She slowly stepped forward, her eyes dropping to the final page of the contract lying open on the table. My mother let out a strangled gasp, lunging forward as if to physically snatch the document away, but she was too late. Diane was already reading it. Her eyes scanned the bold black ink outlining the strict payment terms, the event dates, and the names of the parties involved. Then her gaze landed squarely on the signature line. The ink was bold and undeniable. My signature rested perfectly on the dotted line, right above the printed title that my family had spent an entire decade refusing to acknowledge. Rebecca, Chief Executive Officer and Owner, Lux Venues and Catering. The silence in the room stretches thick and suffocating, completely devoid of the chaotic energy my mother and sister brought with them. Diane stares at the signature. The name printed in bold black letters stares right back at her. The Austin matriarch is not a woman who is easily shocked, but the realization that she just snapped her fingers at the chief executive officer of a massive enterprise visibly rocks her absolute composure. She slowly lowers her hand, her perfectly manicured fingers curling inward as she processes her massive miscalculation. She looks from the heavy contract on the glass table directly to my face, her sharp eyes narrowing as she mentally recalculates the entire power dynamic of the room. Ashley looks physically ill. The triumphant, malicious smirk has completely melted off her face, instantly replaced by a pale, trembling horror. She stares at the gold-embossed logo on the contract, then looks around the expansive, glass-walled office as if truly seeing it for the very first time. She finally registers the panoramic skyline, views the custom furniture, the sheer magnitude of the wealth surrounding her. My mother is completely frozen. Her mouth opens and closes, but absolutely no sound escapes her throat. The illusion she has maintained for a decade is burning to the ground right in front of her. Before anyone can formulate a coherent sentence, the heavy office doors swing open again. Thomas, my father, bursts into the room. He is out of breath, his expensive silk tie slightly askew, carrying a heavy leather briefcase. He rushes toward the center of the office, completely oblivious to the radioactive tension suffocating the space. He immediately focuses on the wealthiest person in the room, Diane. "I am so incredibly sorry," he pants, attempting a charming, apologetic smile. The traffic on the interstate was an absolute nightmare. I came as quickly as I could to resolve this tiny issue. He turns to my mother, his brow furrowing in deep confusion. "Linda, Why are we meeting in this random office? I thought we were going directly to the venue to sort out this billing error with the administrative staff. Diane does not say a single word. She simply picks up the master contract from the glass coffee table and thrusts it directly into my father's chest. I suggest you read the bottom line, Thomas, she says, her voice dangerously calm. And then I suggest you explain to me why your daughter owns the property you explicitly claimed you paid for. Thomas takes the document. His eyes scan the heavy parchment paper. I watch his pupils dart back and forth, absorbing the legal terms, the financial figures, and finally, my undeniable signature. I watch the exact moment his carefully constructed reality shatters into a million pieces. For 6 months, he believed he had outsmarted everyone. He believed he could pocket Diane's money, force me to subsidize his daughter's luxury wedding, and maintain his fragile image as a wealthy, capable provider. Now, the absolute truth is printed in black and white, resting right in his hands, with Diane Austen demanding answers. The silence is deafening. I wait for the inevitable explosion. I wait for the abusive, condescending anger he always defaults to when he is backed into a tight corner. But the explosion never comes. Instead, I witness the most shameless, repulsive pivot I have ever seen in my entire life. Thomas's posture instantly transforms. The rigid, defensive tension drains entirely from his shoulders. He looks up from the contract, bypasses Diane entirely, and locks eyes with me. A massive, sickeningly proud grin stretches across his face. "Rebecca," he booms, his voice dripping with forced, jovial affection. "Look at you. Just look at this place." He spreads his arms wide, gesturing to the sprawling executive suite as if he had built it himself. "You always were the ambitious one." My mother, desperate to survive Diane's impending wrath, immediately catches on to the new strategy. She steps forward, her face flushing with artificial warmth. "We are just so incredibly proud of her." Diane, Linda gushes, her tone completely unrecognizable from the woman who screamed at me through the phone at 2 in the morning. "She built this entire enterprise from the ground up. We always knew she was destined for greatness. It is a family trait, really. Business acumen is simply in our blood." Ashley stands in the corner looking nauseous, but she nods along, terrified of ruining her engagement. Diane crosses her arms, her diamond rings flashing under the recessed lighting. She is a woman who deals in multi-million-dollar acquisitions daily. She is not fooled by this pathetic display. "If you are so proud of your daughter's enterprise," Diane states coldly, "then perhaps you can explain why she just sent me a cancellation notice for $150,000. The fake smiles on my parents' faces waver for a fraction of a second. Thomas steps forward, letting out a booming, overly hearty laugh. "Oh, Diane, that is nothing but a silly family misunderstanding." He looks at me, his eyes wide and pleading, silently begging me to play along and save him from absolute ruin. "You see, Rebecca is quite the prankster. That invoice was just a joke, just like that ridiculous $8,000 seating fee we sent her. Right, Rebecca? It was all just a funny little family prank. We just got our wires crossed." I stare at him, my expression completely blank. He is standing in my office, caught in a massive financial lie, and his solution is to pretend this is all a hilarious misunderstanding. He steps closer to my desk, leaning over the polished wood, invading my personal space. The jovial mask slips just slightly, revealing the desperate, manipulative father underneath. "You see," Diane, Thomas continues, keeping his eyes locked on mine. "Rebecca was keeping her massive success a wonderful surprise for the wedding. And now that the secret is out in the open, she is naturally gifting the entire venue to her sister. It is our family wedding present to Ashley and Brandon. A beautiful gesture from an older sister." He lowers his voice, speaking just softly enough that Diane cannot catch the venom in his tone. "We are family, Rebecca." He whispers the words, carrying a heavy implicit threat. "Family loyalty is everything. We make sacrifices for each other. You know how important this is. Do the right thing." Hearing him weaponize the concept of family loyalty triggers a visceral, sickening memory. I am instantly transported back 15 years. It was the morning after my 18th birthday. I was sitting on my bed exhausted from working a closing shift at the diner. The door to my bedroom swung open, and my father walked in carrying a stack of flattened cardboard boxes. He dropped them onto my floor with a heavy thud. He did not say happy birthday. He did not ask how I was doing. He simply looked at me and told me I had 30 days to pack my belongings and find an apartment. When I asked him why he was throwing me out, he did not even have the decency to look ashamed. He told me that Ashley had just turned 16. She was becoming a young woman, a popular cheerleader with a massive social circle. She desperately needed the master suite to accommodate her growing wardrobe and her new makeup studio. He told me it was time for me to be an adult and make a sacrifice for the family. Family loyalty meant that I was forced to move into a tiny moldy studio apartment across town, working double shifts to pay rent while trying to finish my degree, simply so my younger sister could have a custom vanity and a walk-in closet. They threw me out like garbage to elevate their golden child, and now he is standing in my corporate headquarters demanding I hand over a six-figure venue in the name of that exact same loyalty. I pull myself back to the present. I look at my father sweating in his tailored suit. I look at my mother, her hands clasping her designer purse in sheer panic. I look at Ashley clinging to Brandon's arm, terrified that her entire fraudulent world is about to collapse. And then, I look at Diane the matriarch, who values reputation above all else, watching my parents squirm with aristocratic disgust. I slowly lean back in my leather executive chair. I let a warm, agreeable smile spread across my face. "You are absolutely right, Dad," I say, my voice smooth and perfectly accommodating. "Family loyalty is everything." The collective sigh of relief from my parents is so loud it practically echoes. Thomas's shoulders drop, and Linda presses a hand to her chest, breathing out heavily. I open the top drawer of my desk. I reach inside and pull out a fresh, heavily modified corporate contract. I place it gently on the desk and slide it across the smooth wood toward my father. "I will happily reinstate the booking," I announce, keeping my tone bright and professional. "I will zero out the $150,000 balance. But as you can understand, our corporate policies have recently been updated. We have completely new liability protocols for all high-profile events. Since you are the primary leaseholder for the evening, I simply need you and Mom to sign this updated agreement." I pull a heavy gold pen from my holder and place it on top of the document. The contract looks completely standard. It has the same logo, the same formatting, and the same legal jargon on the front page. But buried on the third page, completely hidden within the dense paragraphs of liability waivers, is a strict, irrevocable defamation and liability morality clause. It is a legally binding stipulation that dictates immediate devastating financial penalties if the signing parties engage in any form of public defamation, slander, or malicious behavior toward the venue, its staff, or its owner. If breached, the full cost of the event becomes immediately due, alongside exorbitant punitive damages and immediate cancellation of all services without right to appeal. It is an absolute trap, meticulously designed to legally bind them to their own good behavior and silence their extortion attempts forever. Thomas does not hesitate. Desperate to save face in front of Diane, desperate to secure the venue and maintain his illusion of wealth, he grabs the gold pen. He does not flip to the second page. He does not read a single word of the fine print. He aggressively scribbles his signature on the bottom line. He hands the pen to my mother, who eagerly signs her name right beside his. They push the document back across the desk, smiling with triumphant relief, completely unaware that they just handed me the absolute power to destroy them. Diane Austen barely glances at the newly signed document before turning on her heel. She expects problems to be solved instantly, and as far as she is concerned, my parents have just proven they can manage their own pathetic internal family squabbles. Brandon follows his mother out the door, looking completely exhausted and eager to escape the suffocating tension of my office. My mother and father are practically glowing with smug satisfaction. Thomas straightens his tie, throwing me a look of absolute triumph, utterly convinced he has reasserted his dominance as the patriarch. He genuinely believes his little speech about family loyalty brought me to my knees. Ashley hangs back for a fraction of a second after our parents exit into the hallway. The terror that had gripped her face just moments ago is completely gone. In its place is a look of pure, unadulterated contempt. She actually winks at me, mouthing the word loser before turning around and strutting out of my corporate headquarters. I do not react. I simply watch the heavy glass doors swing shut behind them. Once the corridor is clear, I pick up the freshly signed contract. The ink is barely dry. I run my fingers over the messy signatures at the bottom of the page, feeling the slight indentation the heavy gold pen left on the thick paper. I slide the document into a protective plastic sleeve and lock it securely inside my fireproof filing cabinet. The trap is perfectly set. Now I just have to wait for Ashley to take the bait. I know my sister better than anyone on this earth. I know her absolute inability to accept a silent victory. She needs an audience. She craves public validation. I do not have to wait very long. It happens exactly 7 hours later. I am sitting on the velvet sofa in my living room, reviewing preliminary floral arrangements for a corporate charity gala, when my phone begins to vibrate continuously against the glass coffee table. The notifications arrive in a rapid, relentless wave. I pick up the device, unlocking the screen to find dozens of text messages, direct messages, and social media tags flooding my screen. I open the primary application, and the algorithm immediately feeds me the source of the chaos. It is a video Ashley posted just 20 minutes ago. It has already amassed thousands of views and hundreds of comments from the local socialite circle. I press play, turning up the volume. Ashley is sitting in the front seat of her luxury car, the interior perfectly lit by a ring light she clearly keeps clipped to her dashboard for moments exactly like this. Her eyes are red-rimmed. A single, perfectly manufactured tear tracks down her cheek. She takes a shaky, dramatic breath before speaking directly to the camera lens. "I just need to vent for a second," Ashley says, her voice trembling with artificial heartbreak. Wedding planning is supposed to be the most magical time in a girl's life. But nobody warns you about the toxic, jealous, unmarried older sisters who will literally do anything to sabotage your happiness out of pure spite. She wipes the fake tear away, sniffing delicately. It is just so hard when you are trying to build a beautiful future, and someone who is supposed to love you tries to ruin your venue and destroy your reputation just because they are miserable and alone. But I am so incredibly blessed. My amazing parents stepped in today. They completely forced the spinster to submit and stop her petty little temper tantrum. Family loyalty won in the end, but the emotional abuse is just so exhausting. I watched the video loop 3 times in total silence. She hit every single buzzword. She painted herself as the ultimate victim, a radiant bride besieged by a bitter, aging, jealous sister. The comments section is an absolute cesspool of validation for her fabricated suffering. Girls she went to high school with, wealthy women from my parents' country club, and even members of our extended family are leaving paragraphs of unwavering support. They are praising her bravery. They are calling me a toxic narcissist. The direct messages in my personal inbox are even worse. My Aunt Patricia sends a lengthy text accusing me of trying to extort my own flesh and blood. A girl I have not spoken to since high school messages me to say my behavior is absolutely pathetic and that I need intensive therapy. The digital smear campaign is spreading through our local network like a wildfire, entirely fueled by Ashley's insatiable ego and my parents' endless enabling. She could have simply walked away with the venue. She could have quietly enjoyed the fact that my parents secured her dream wedding. But she had to twist the knife. She had to publicly humiliate me to cement her position as the flawless golden child. She truly believes there are zero consequences for destroying my character. Staring at the hateful comments scrolling across my screen, a familiar, sickening weight settles deep in my chest. This is exactly what she did to me during my junior year of college. I had spent 8 grueling months interviewing for a highly competitive paid summer internship at a premier marketing firm in Chicago. It was my golden ticket out of my parents' house, and the absolute key to launching my independent career. When the acceptance letter arrived, I was ecstatic. I made the fatal mistake of celebrating at a family dinner. 2 days later, the marketing firm abruptly rescinded the offer, citing a deeply concerning anonymous tip regarding my character. I later discovered that Ashley, furious that my success was pulling attention away from her upcoming sorority formal, had created a series of fake social media profiles. She spent hours messaging the executives at the marketing firm, sending them fabricated screenshots claiming I was a severe liability, who routinely stole from previous employers and abused illegal substances. When I confronted her with the digital footprints, linking the fake accounts back to her phone, she just laughed in my face. I took the evidence directly to our parents, sobbing uncontrollably, begging them to intervene and punish her for literally destroying my career path. My mother had simply rolled her eyes, waved her hand dismissively, and told me I was overreacting to normal, everyday sisterly rivalry. She told me to stop being so paranoid and to find a job locally so I could help drive Ashley to her summer cheer practices. They let her sabotage my future, and they protected her from the fallout. She learned then that she could ruin me whenever she pleased, and our parents would always act as her absolute shield. I look out over the city lights, feeling a profound sense of clarity wash over me. For years, I allowed their blatant disrespect to dictate my self-worth. I swallowed my pride because I mistakenly believed that familial love required endless suffering. But standing here now, armed with irrefutable proof of their breach of contract, I realize the absolute absurdity of my previous loyalty. I am not going to let history repeat itself. My phone buzzes again. It is another text message, this time from my mother. The screen lights up with her words. Ashley is just venting her feelings. Do not respond to her video. Do not cause a scene online. Be the bigger person and let her have this moment. I stare at the glowing text message in the quiet of my living room. They still think I am the helpless college student standing in their living room, begging for basic justice that will never come. They think I am going to sit in my house, absorb the public humiliation, and stay absolutely silent to keep the peace. I close the messaging application. I do not type a defense in the comments section. I do not film a response video to argue my side of the story or plead for sympathy. Engaging with a narcissist in a public forum is a fool's errand. Instead, I open my contacts list and find the private number for Marcus Thorne. He is the lead corporate litigator for Lux Venues and Catering, a man known throughout the city for his utterly ruthless, terrifyingly efficient legal maneuvers. I press the call button and bring the phone to my ear. He answers on the second ring, his voice crisp and professional, regardless of the late hour. Marcus, I say, my tone completely devoid of any emotion. I need you to navigate to the public social media profile of Ashley Elaine. I need you to legally archive, download, and thoroughly document the video she posted exactly 30 minutes ago. Capture every single comment, every share, and every metric of local engagement. I hear the rapid clicking of a keyboard on his end of the line as he immediately pulls up the requested webpage. Consider it done, Rebecca. He responds smoothly, his voice betraying a hint of dark amusement. Are we initiating a standard cease and desist protocol? No, I reply, standing up from the velvet sofa and walking over to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sparkling city skyline. We are not sending a warning. I have a freshly signed, legally binding contract sitting in my office safe. The primary leaseholders, Thomas and Linda, just triggered a massive, catastrophic breach of the defamation and liability morality clause. Execute the immediate cancellation of the Emerald Conservatory reservation. Draft the penalty invoice for the full $150,000 balance, plus the maximum allowable punitive damages for corporate slander. I want the formal legal notice delivered to their residence by courier at exactly 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The rehearsal dinner takes place that exact same evening in the private dining room of the Austin Family Country Club. The space is a masterclass in generational wealth, featuring dark mahogany paneled walls, heavy crystal chandeliers, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking an immaculately manicured golf course illuminated by soft landscape lighting. I arrive exactly on time wearing a tailored charcoal suit that screams quiet authority, a stark contrast to the overly flashy cocktail dresses dotting the room. The moment I step into the space, the dynamic is painfully obvious. Brandon's family occupies the room as if they own the very air inside it. Diane Austen sits rigidly at the head of the long table, her posture perfect, her expression locked in a perpetual state of mild distaste. Beside her sits Brandon's father, Charles Austen. Charles is a formidable presence, a man who built a massive real estate empire and expects total deference from everyone in his orbit. My parents, conversely, are vibrating with a desperate, pathetic need to impress. My mother laughs too loudly at every minor comment Diane makes. My father is practically hovering over Charles, desperately trying to project the image of a wealthy equal peer. I take my assigned seat at the far end of the table, deliberately placing myself on the periphery of the main action. I do not engage in the frantic social climbing. I simply unfold my heavy linen napkin, order a glass of sparkling water with lemon, and observe the tragedy unfolding before me. The Austen family is acting incredibly superior, treating my parents less like future in-laws and more like the hired entertainment. Charles Austen barely makes eye contact with my father when Thomas speaks, offering only non-committal grunts in response to my father's enthusiastic chatter. Diane occasionally shoots me dark, calculating glances, clearly still unnerved by our encounter in my executive suite earlier that morning. But Thomas has successfully spun a massive web of lies to smooth over the invoice incident, convincing the Austens that the entire situation was just a minor administrative hiccup that he personally resolved. My father is currently leaning across the pristine white tablecloth, aggressively pitching his supposed business acumen to Charles. He waves his hands, tossing around industry buzzwords and name-dropping local politicians he claims to know intimately. As the waitstaff clears the main course plates, moving silently around the room to collect the fine china, the sharp clinking of a silver fork against a crystal glass rings out. Ashley stands up from her seat next to Brandon. She is wearing a tight white silk dress, and her cheeks are flushed bright red from consuming at least 3 glasses of vintage champagne. She grabs the microphone set up for speeches at the front of the room, her grip slightly unsteady. She sways on her high heels, plastering a radiant camera-ready smile across her face. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight." Ashley begins, her voice echoing loudly through the private dining room. She slurs her words just a fraction, the alcohol fueling her massive ego and stripping away any remaining filter. This entire week has been so incredibly stressful, but looking around this beautiful room, seeing 2 amazing successful families coming together, it makes all the tears completely worth it. She pauses, looking directly at Diane and Charles with a sickeningly sweet expression. "We are just so honored to join the Austen legacy." Then she turns her gaze slowly down the length of the table, her eyes locked directly onto me. The sweet, innocent bride vanishes instantly. The toxic, vindictive sister takes the stage. And I really want to take a special moment to raise a glass to my older sister, Rebecca. Ashley announces, her tone dripping with passive-aggressive venom. We all know Rebecca has always been a little different, a little closed off, a little jealous of the things the rest of us have naturally. She lets out a sharp, breathless laugh that sounds entirely malicious. But today she finally stepped up. After years of isolating herself and making things so incredibly difficult for our parents, she finally paid her dues to the family. She finally realized that her little catering business is nothing compared to family loyalty. So here is to Rebecca for finally submitting to what really matters and giving us the wedding venue we deserve. It is about time she made herself useful. She raises her champagne flute high in the air, a triumphant, nasty smirk locked onto her face. My mother immediately claps, letting out a loud, supportive cheer. Diane Austen looks mildly horrified by the blatant lack of class, her lips pressing into a thin line, while Charles just stares at Ashley with cold indifference. Brandon stares down at his plate, twisting his napkin, completely mortified by his future bride's behavior. I do not react. I do not flush with embarrassment. I do not look away. I sit perfectly still, holding my glass of sparkling water, maintaining direct, unwavering eye contact with my sister. My complete lack of reaction visibly agitates her. Before the awkward silence can stretch any further, Thomas jumps out of his chair. He practically rips the microphone from Ashley's hand, desperate to capitalize on the moment and impress his wealthy future in-laws. "Let us give it up for my beautiful girls." Thomas booms, clapping heavily. He turns his attention directly to Charles Austin, puffing out his chest and adjusting his suit jacket. "You know, Charles, raising daughters in the business world is quite the challenge. Rebecca here, she built a nice little operation for herself. But she did not do it alone. I taught that girl everything she knows about corporate strategy. I gave her the foundation, the grit, the absolute financial genius required to survive in this economy. I guided her every step of the way. She owes her success entirely to the business principles I instilled in her." I slowly take a sip of my sparkling water. The sheer audacity of his lie is almost breathtaking. He is standing in a room full of multimillionaires, claiming to be a financial genius. I sit quietly, letting him dig his own grave, as my mind flashes back to the absolute reality of his business principles. I remember being 14 years old, waking up at 3 in the morning to the sound of heavy diesel engines idling in our driveway. I remember peeking through my bedroom blinds and watching two repo men quietly hook up my father's luxury sedan and my mother's sports car to tow trucks, hauling them away into the cold darkness. The very next morning, Thomas told all the neighbors the cars were at a specialty detail shop across the state. I remember turning 19, trying to rent my first apartment, and discovering that my father had stolen my social security number to open 3 separate credit cards in my name. He maxed them out instantly to pay his overdue country club fees, just so he could continue rubbing shoulders with men exactly like Charles Austin. I remember watching him file for bankruptcy not once, but twice, burying his massive, crippling debts behind a pathetic facade of leased watches, counterfeit designer suits, and endless lies. He is a financial parasite, a man who destroys everything he touches to maintain an illusion of wealth. And right now, he is using this wedding to orchestrate his ultimate scam. Thomas leans closer to Charles, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial tone that still echoes loudly through the microphone speakers. "In fact, Charles, that is exactly why I wanted to bring you into my new commercial real estate venture. I have the vision, the drive, the exact same strategy I used to build Rebecca's company. I just need a partner with your level of capital to get the first phase off the ground. It is a guaranteed return on investment. I promise you, you will not find a more secure financial partnership anywhere in the state." He smiles broadly, utterly convinced he has just secured his next wealthy victim. Charles looks at him, his expression completely blank, offering absolutely no encouragement or validation. The room falls quiet as Thomas hands the microphone back to the stand and returns to his seat, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. It is the perfect moment. I set my glass of sparkling water down on the table. The soft clink of the glass against the wood draws every eye in the room toward me. I stand up slowly, smoothing the front of my charcoal blazer. I do not walk toward the microphone. I do not need it. My voice carries perfectly through the silent room, ringing with absolute, unshakable authority. "I would like to propose a toast as well." I announce, my tone dangerously smooth. I look directly at my father. Ashley is right. I have learned so much about family loyalty this week. But more importantly, I have to agree with my father. He truly did teach me everything I know about business. He taught me the absolute importance of reading the fine print. He taught me to never trust a verbal promise. And most importantly, he taught me the true value of financial creativity. I pick up my leather handbag from the chair beside me. I reach inside and pull out a thick, heavy manila folder. It is sealed with a bright red string tie. The entire room watches me in total silence as I walk slowly down the length of the dining table. My father's smug smile begins to waver. My mother's hands tighten around her napkin, her knuckles turning white. Ashley glares at me, her jaw clenched tight, realizing her triumphant moment has been completely hijacked. I ignore them all. I walk straight past my family, straight past Brandon and Diane, and stop directly beside Charles Austin's chair. I place the heavy sealed folder squarely on the pristine white tablecloth directly next to his dinner plate. Charles looks down at the folder, then looks up at me, his sharp eyes narrowing with intense calculated curiosity. "What is this?" Charles asks, his deep voice breaking the heavy silence. I offer him a polite, razor-sharp smile. "That is a comprehensive portfolio of my father's financial creativity," I say, ensuring my voice is loud enough for every single person in the room to hear clearly. Inside that folder, you will find fully certified public records detailing his 2 previous bankruptcy filings. You will also find a highly detailed background check outlining over $400,000 in active unsecured debt. And finally, you will find a complete fraud analysis of the commercial real estate venture he just pitched to you, proving that the properties he claims to hold options on do not actually exist. My father lets out a strangled, breathless gasp, his face instantly draining of all color. My mother drops her wine glass. It shatters against the floor, red wine bleeding into the expensive carpet like a fresh wound. But no one even looks at the mess. Ashley lets out a sharp shriek, jumping up from her chair. I look directly into Charles Austin's stunned eyes. "I strongly suggest you read it before you write him a check, Charles." I turn my back on the absolute chaos I have just unleashed. I do not wait to see Charles open the folder. I do not wait to hear my father's desperate, pathetic excuses or Ashley's drunken screaming. I simply walk out of the private dining room, pushing through the heavy mahogany doors, and step out into the cool evening air, leaving them to choke on the ashes of their own lies. The silence in the room stretches thick and suffocating, completely devoid of the chaotic energy my mother and sister brought with them. Diane stares at the signature. The name printed in bold black letters stares right back at her. The Austin matriarch is not a woman who is easily shocked, but the realization that she just snapped her fingers at the chief executive officer of a massive enterprise visibly rocks her absolute composure. She slowly lowers her hand, her perfectly manicured fingers curling inward as she processes her massive miscalculation. She looks from the heavy contract on the glass table directly to my face, her sharp eyes narrowing as she mentally recalculates the entire power dynamic of the room. Ashley looks physically ill. The triumphant, malicious smirk has completely melted off her face, instantly replaced by a pale, trembling horror. She stares at the gold-embossed logo on the contract, then looks around the expansive, glass-walled office, as if truly seeing it for the very first time. She finally registers the panoramic skyline views, the custom furniture, the sheer magnitude of the wealth surrounding her. My mother is completely frozen. Her mouth opens and closes, but absolutely no sound escapes her throat. The illusion she has maintained for a decade is burning to the ground right in front of her. Before anyone can formulate a coherent sentence, the heavy office doors swing open again. Thomas, my father, bursts into the room. He is out of breath, his expensive silk tie slightly askew, carrying a heavy leather briefcase. He rushes toward the center of the office, completely oblivious to the radioactive tension suffocating the space. He immediately focuses on the wealthiest person in the room. "Diane. I am so incredibly sorry," he pants, attempting a charming apologetic smile. "The traffic on the interstate was an absolute nightmare. I came as quickly as I could to resolve this tiny issue." He turns to my mother, his brow furrowing in deep confusion. "Linda, why are we meeting in this random office? I thought we were going directly to the venue to sort out this billing error with the administrative staff." Diane does not say a single word. She simply picks up the master contract from the glass coffee table and thrusts it directly into my father's chest. "I suggest you read the bottom line, Thomas," she says, her voice dangerously calm. "And then I suggest you explain to me why your daughter owns the property you explicitly claimed you paid for." Thomas takes the document. His eyes scan the heavy parchment paper. I watch his pupils dart back and forth, absorbing the legal terms, the financial figures, and finally my undeniable signature. I watch the exact moment his carefully constructed reality shatters into a million pieces. For 6 months, he believed he had outsmarted everyone. He believed he could pocket Diane's money, force me to subsidize his daughter's luxury wedding, and maintain his fragile image as a wealthy, capable provider. Now the absolute truth is printed in black and white, resting right in his hands, with Diane Austen demanding answers. The silence is deafening. I wait for the inevitable explosion. I wait for the abusive, condescending anger he always defaults to when he is backed into a tight corner. But the explosion never comes. Instead, I witness the most shameless, repulsive pivot I have ever seen in my entire life. Thomas's posture instantly transforms. The rigid defensive tension drains entirely from his shoulders. He looks up from the contract, bypasses Diane entirely, and locks eyes with me. A massive, sickeningly proud grin stretches across his face. "Rebecca," he booms, his voice dripping with forced, jovial affection. "Look at you. Just look at this place." He spreads his arms wide, gesturing to the sprawling executive suite, as if he had built it himself. "You always were the ambitious one." My mother, desperate to survive Diane's impending wrath, immediately catches on to the new strategy. She steps forward, her face flushing with artificial warmth. "We are just so incredibly proud of her." Diane Linda gushes, her tone completely unrecognizable from the woman who screamed at me through the phone at 2 in the morning. She built this entire enterprise from the ground up. We always knew she was destined for greatness. It is a family trait, really. Business acumen is simply in our blood. Ashley stands in the corner looking nauseous, but she nods along, terrified of ruining her engagement. Diane crosses her arms, her diamond rings flashing under the recessed lighting. She is a woman who deals in multi-million-dollar acquisitions daily. She is not fooled by this pathetic display. "If you are so proud of your daughter's enterprise," Diane states coldly, "then perhaps you can explain why she just sent me a cancellation notice for $150,000. The fake smiles on my parents' faces waver for a fraction of a second. Thomas steps forward, letting out a booming, overly hearty laugh. "Oh, Diane, that is nothing but a silly family misunderstanding." He looks at me, his eyes wide and pleading silently, begging me to play along and save him from absolute ruin. "You see, Rebecca is quite the prankster. That invoice was just a joke, just like that ridiculous $8,000 seating fee we sent her." "Right, Rebecca. It was all just a funny little family prank. We just got our wires crossed." I stare at him, my expression completely blank. He is standing in my office, caught in a massive financial lie, and his solution is to pretend this is all a hilarious misunderstanding. He steps closer to my desk, leaning over the polished wood, invading my personal space. The jovial mask slips just slightly, revealing the desperate, manipulative father underneath. "You see," Diane Thomas continues, keeping his eyes locked on mine. "Rebecca was keeping her massive success a wonderful surprise for the wedding. And now that the secret is out in the open, she is naturally gifting the entire venue to her sister. It is our family wedding present to Ashley and Brandon, a beautiful gesture from an older sister." He lowers his voice, speaking just softly enough that Diane cannot catch the venom in his tone. "We are family, Rebecca." He whispers the words, carrying a heavy implicit threat. "Family loyalty is everything. We make sacrifices for each other. You know how important this is. Do the right thing." Hearing him weaponize the concept of family loyalty triggers a visceral, sickening memory. I am instantly transported back 15 years. It was the morning after my 18th birthday. I was sitting on my bed, exhausted from working a closing shift at the diner. The door to my bedroom swung open, and my father walked in carrying a stack of flattened cardboard boxes. He dropped them onto my floor with a heavy thud. He did not say happy birthday. He did not ask how I was doing. He simply looked at me and told me I had 30 days to pack my belongings and find an apartment. When I asked him why he was throwing me out, he did not even have the decency to look ashamed. He told me that Ashley had just turned 16. She was becoming a young woman, a popular cheerleader with a massive social circle. She desperately needed the master suite to accommodate her growing wardrobe and her new makeup studio. He told me it was time for me to be an adult and make a sacrifice for the family. Family loyalty meant that I was forced to move into a tiny, moldy studio apartment across town, working double shifts to pay rent while trying to finish my degree, simply so my younger sister could have a custom vanity and a walk-in closet. They threw me out like garbage to elevate their golden child, and now he is standing in my corporate headquarters demanding I hand over a six-figure venue in the name of that exact same loyalty. I pull myself back to the present. I look at my father sweating in his tailored suit. I look at my mother, her hands clasping her designer purse in sheer panic. I look at Ashley clinging to Brandon's arm, terrified that her entire fraudulent world is about to collapse. And then I look at Diane, the matriarch who values reputation above all else, watching my parents squirm with aristocratic disgust. I slowly lean back in my leather executive chair. I let a warm, agreeable smile spread across my face. You are absolutely right, Dad. I say, my voice smooth and perfectly accommodating. Family loyalty is everything. The collective sigh of relief from my parents is so loud it practically echoes. Thomas's shoulders drop and Linda presses a hand to her chest, breathing out heavily. I open the top drawer of my desk. I reach inside and pull out a fresh, heavily modified corporate contract. I place it gently on the desk and slide it across the smooth wood toward my father. I will happily reinstate the booking, I announce, keeping my tone bright and professional. I will zero out the $150,000 balance. But as you can understand, our corporate policies have recently been updated. We have completely new liability protocols for all high-profile events. Since you are the primary leaseholder for the evening, I simply need you and Mom to sign this updated agreement. I pull a heavy gold pen from my holder and place it on top of the document. The contract looks completely standard. It has the same logo, the same formatting, and the same legal jargon on the front page. But buried on the third page, completely hidden within the dense paragraphs of liability waivers, is a strict, irrevocable defamation and liability morality clause. It is a legally binding stipulation that dictates immediate devastating financial penalties if the signing parties engage in any form of public defamation, slander, or malicious behavior toward the venue, its staff, or its owner. If breached, the full cost of the event becomes immediately due alongside exorbitant punitive damages and immediate cancellation of all services without right to appeal. It is an absolute trap, meticulously designed to legally bind them to their own good behavior and silence their extortion attempts forever. Thomas does not hesitate. Desperate to save face in front of Diane, desperate to secure the venue and maintain his illusion of wealth, he grabs the gold pen. He does not flip to the second page. He does not read a single word of the fine print. He aggressively scribbles his signature on the bottom line. He hands the pen to my mother, who eagerly signs her name right beside his. They push the document back across the desk, smiling with triumphant relief, completely unaware that they just handed me the absolute power to destroy them. The morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of my penthouse suite at the Four Seasons. It was exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, 6 hours before Ashley was scheduled to walk down the aisle at my conservatory. I was sitting at the glass dining table, quietly sipping a cup of black coffee and reviewing the quarterly earnings report for my catering division. The absolute chaos of the previous night's rehearsal dinner felt like a distant memory, securely locked away behind the heavy doors of my luxury hotel room. I had not spoken a single word to anyone in my family since I walked away from Brandon and Ashley in that dim country club hallway. I knew the fallout was currently tearing their fragile world apart, but I felt absolutely nothing but profound, untethered peace. That peace was violently shattered by the sound of heavy fists pounding furiously against my suite door. The knocking was frantic, desperate, and entirely relentless. Before I could even stand up from my chair to check the security monitor, the heavy wooden door swung open. They had somehow bullied or bribed the concierge downstairs into granting them access. Thomas and Linda practically fell into the entryway. They looked absolutely horrific. My father, a man who typically spent an hour meticulously styling his hair and polishing his designer shoes, was currently wearing a wrinkled, sweat-stained dress shirt that looked like he had slept in it. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot and darting wildly around the room. My mother was in an even worse state. Her expensive makeup was smeared completely down her cheeks. Her hair was a chaotic mess of tangled blonde extensions, and she was clutching her luxury handbag so tightly her knuckles were stark white. "Rebecca! Please," my mother shrieked, her voice cracking as she stumbled forward and practically threw herself onto the plush carpet. She dropped directly to her knees, her hands grasping desperately at the hem of my silk robe. "You have to help us. You have to save us. Please, I am begging you on my hands and knees." I stepped back smoothly, pulling the fabric of my robe out of her frantic grip. I looked down at them, my expression completely neutral. I did not offer them a seat. I did not offer them water. I simply waited for the inevitable demand. Thomas fell to his knees right beside her, the heavy thud of his kneecaps hitting the floor echoing loudly in the quiet suite. He clasped his hands together in a posture of desperate prayer, looking up at me with tears welling in his red, exhausted eyes. Diane Austen gave us an ultimatum. He gasped, his chest heaving as he struggled to pull oxygen into his lungs. "Brandon went back to his parents last night after you left. He told them everything. He told them about the argument with Ashley, about the fake commercial real estate portfolio, about everything." Diane completely lost her mind. She told Charles to pull the plug on the entire wedding and the merger immediately. My mother let out a loud theatrical sob, burying her face in her hands. "But Charles is a businessman," Thomas continued rapidly, desperation causing his words to slur together. "Charles told Diane that business is business. He said that if I can prove I actually have liquid capital, if I can prove I am not completely bankrupt, he will still consider the commercial merger and let the wedding proceed to save face in front of their high-profile guests. But I have to prove it right now, Rebecca. I have exactly 6 hours before the ceremony begins." Charles demanded that I clear the $150,000 venue invoice immediately in cash directly to your corporate account. If I do not wire you the funds by noon, he is pulling the guests, canceling the catering, and publicly calling off the wedding. They both stared at me, their faces contorted in absolute raw panic. It was a pathetic, disgusting display of entitlement. They were not here because they loved me. They were not here to apologize for treating me like an invisible servant for my entire life. They were here because their ultimate scam was falling apart, and I was the only person with enough capital to bail them out. "Just mark the invoice as paid in your system," my mother pleaded, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "We are not even asking you for cash, Rebecca. Just log into your corporate portal and generate a receipt showing the balance is cleared. Tell Charles that we wired you the funds this morning. It takes 5 seconds. Just press a few buttons and save your sister's wedding. Save our family name. If this wedding does not happen, we are completely ruined. The country club will revoke our membership. Your father's investors will demand their money back. We will have absolutely nothing left. You are asking me to commit wire fraud to secure a fake real estate merger for a man who stole my social security number." I stated, my voice dangerously calm and incredibly quiet. My father's face flushed a deep, dark crimson. He scrambled up from his knees, his desperation instantly transforming into defensive rage. He spun around and pointed a shaking finger directly at my mother's face. "This is your fault, Linda," he screamed, spit flying from his lips. "You are the one who spoiled that girl rotten. You are the one who demanded the $50,000 floral budget. You are the one who maxed out 3 different credit cards buying her designer wedding gowns she did not even need. If you had just controlled your spending, I would not have had to leverage this fake merger to pay for your ridiculous lifestyle." My mother shot up from the floor, her own anger exploding as she shoved his pointing finger away. "Do not you dare blame me for your pathetic failures, Thomas," she shrieked right back at him. "You are the one who insisted on joining that elite country club when we could barely afford the mortgage on our house. You are the one who bought a Porsche on a high-interest lease just to impress men who do not even respect you. Your massive ego drove this family into bankruptcy twice. You are a fraud, Thomas. You have always been a complete fraud." I stood silently by the glass dining table, watching my parents tear each other apart in the center of my hotel suite. It was a vicious, ugly screaming match. They hurled decades of financial secrets and toxic resentments at each other, entirely forgetting that I was even in the room. They blamed the economy. They blamed the high cost of living. They blamed Ashley's demanding social circle. But not once during their entire 10-minute screaming match did either of them apologize to me. They did not apologize for treating me like a glorified maid at Ashley's Sweet 16. They did not apologize for kicking me out of my childhood home simply to give my sister a larger closet. They did not apologize for turning a blind eye when Ashley actively sabotaged my career internship in Chicago. They were standing in a luxury suite, paid for by my massive corporate success, begging for my money, and they still could not muster a single ounce of genuine remorse for the daughter they had abused. I slowly walked over to the entryway table, where I had dropped my leather handbag the night before. I reached inside the front pocket. My hand brushed against the crisp, folded piece of paper I had carried with me for exactly 4 weeks. I pulled it out, gripping it tightly between my fingers. "Enough," I said. I did not shout. I did not raise my voice. I simply spoke the word with such heavy, chilling authority that my parents instantly froze. They snapped their mouths shut, turning to face me with wide, terrified eyes, remembering suddenly that I held their entire future in the palm of my hand. I walked back toward the center of the room, holding the folded piece of paper up in the morning light. I unfolded it smoothly, the sharp crease of the paper making a crisp, snapping sound in the quiet room. "Do you remember this?" I asked, holding it out toward my mother. Linda squinted, her smeared mascara making her look like a terrified raccoon. It was the original $8,000 seating fee invoice. The exact same piece of paper they had slammed onto my desk 4 weeks ago, when they demanded I subsidize the wedding out of my own pocket. "4 weeks ago, you handed me this piece of paper." I continued, my voice steady and utterly devoid of mercy. "You looked me directly in the eyes, and you told me that if I did not pay this bill, if I did not sacrifice my hard-earned savings to elevate Ashley, I would completely lose my family. You told me that I would be cut off, excommunicated, and forgotten. You weaponized the concept of family love to extort me for $8,000. My father opened his mouth, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "Rebecca, please, we were just stressed. We did not mean it like that. We love you. You are our daughter. We are so proud of you." I ignored his pathetic, hollow lies. I looked directly at my mother, maintaining eye contact, as I slowly, methodically tore the $8,000 invoice exactly in half. I placed the 2 torn pieces of paper together and tore them in half again, letting the small shreds flutter down onto the expensive hotel carpet. "You said if I did not pay, I would lose my family." I repeated, my tone dropping to a lethal, quiet register. I spent my entire life thinking that was a threat. But this week, looking at the 2 of you, watching you lie and steal and tear each other apart for the sake of an illusion, I realized it was not a threat at all. It was the best offer I have ever received. I walked over to the glass table and picked up my corporate tablet. The screen was already glowing, displaying the master administrative dashboard for the Emerald Conservatory. I looked at the bright red button hovering next to Ashley and Brandon's reservation file. "I decided to buy my freedom for $0, I said. I pressed the button on my tablet. The system instantly triggered the catastrophic breach of contract protocol. The screen flashed a brilliant, unforgiving green, confirming the irreversible action. In that exact fraction of a second, an automated, legally binding electronic notification was instantly dispatched to Diane Austin, Charles Austin, and the entire wedding planning committee. The message definitively stated that due to a severe, irreconcilable breach of the venue's morality and defamation clauses by the primary leaseholders, the event was officially terminated. Every vendor was canceled. The massive floral installations were ordered to be dismantled. The luxury catering staff were immediately dismissed from the premises. The cancellation was absolute, final, and completely merciless. My tablet chimed softly, indicating the automated emails had successfully reached their incredibly wealthy targets. I locked the device and set it down on the smooth glass table. Thomas and Linda stared at the blank screen, the horrific realization slowly washing over their pale faces. They finally understood the absolute gravity of the situation. Their fraudulent empire was entirely dead. "You have exactly 60 seconds to vacate my hotel suite," I stated, turning my back to them to look out over the beautiful sunlit city. "Before I call hotel security to physically remove you. The formal legal notice will drop like a guillotine at exactly 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, but tonight I have a rehearsal dinner to attend." I change out of my office attire and slip into a tailored emerald green sheath dress that projects quiet, unshakable confidence. The rehearsal dinner is being held in the private mahogany-paneled dining room of the Austin's ultra-exclusive country club. It is a space designed to intimidate, featuring crystal chandeliers, heavy velvet drapes, and an army of white-gloved waitstaff moving silently across thick Persian carpets. I arrive exactly on time and take my assigned seat at the far end of the long banquet table. The dynamic in the room is instantly painfully obvious. Brandon's family occupies the space as if they own the very air we breathe. They act incredibly superior, their posture rigid, their smiles tight and patronizing. Diane Austin sits at the head of the table next to her husband Charles, a notoriously ruthless real estate tycoon who looks like he would rather be undergoing a root canal than sharing a meal with my family. My parents, conversely, are practically vibrating with a desperate, pathetic need to impress. My mother laughs far too loudly at every minor observation Diane makes, her eager, high-pitched giggles echoing awkwardly off the wood-paneled walls. My father is completely abandoning his dignity, hovering near Charles Austin, and aggressively trying to project the image of a wealthy equal peer. He name-drops local politicians he has never actually met, and throws around outdated business jargon, completely oblivious to the cold, thinly veiled contempt in Charles's eyes. I do not participate in the frantic social climbing. I sit quietly in my chair sipping a glass of chilled, sparkling water, with a twist of lemon, simply observing the tragic comedy unfolding before me. I let the cool carbonation settle my nerves, perfectly content to remain silent and watch my family dig their own graves. As the waitstaff clears the main course plates, leaving only the scent of roasted duck and truffles in the air, the sharp clinking of a silver knife against a crystal champagne flute rings out. Ashley stands up from her seat next to Brandon. She is wearing a tight backless white silk dress, and her cheeks are flushed a bright blotchy pink from consuming at least 4 glasses of vintage champagne on an empty stomach. She grabs the microphone set up at the front of the room, her grip slightly unsteady as she sways on her designer heels. She plasters a radiant camera-ready smile across her face, playing the role of the blushing bride for exactly 10 seconds. She thanks Brandon's parents for hosting the beautiful dinner, her voice slurring just a fraction as she praises their incredible taste, but she is physically incapable of maintaining the innocent facade. The alcohol has stripped away her filter and fueled her insatiable, toxic ego. She turns her gaze slowly down the length of the long table, her eyes locking directly onto me. "I want to take a special moment to raise a glass to my older sister, Rebecca Ashley," announces her tone suddenly dripping with passive-aggressive venom that echoes loudly through the speakers. We all know Rebecca has always been a little different, a little closed off, a little stubborn. She lets out a sharp, breathless laugh that sounds entirely malicious. But today, she finally stepped up. After years of isolating herself and making things so incredibly difficult for our family, she finally paid her dues. She finally realized that her little catering hobby is nothing compared to family loyalty. So here is to Rebecca for finally submitting to what really matters and giving us the wedding venue we deserve. It is about time she made herself useful. She raises her champagne flute high in the air, a triumphant, nasty smirk locked onto her face, completely oblivious to the horrific legal storm that will destroy her morning. My mother immediately claps, letting out a loud, supportive cheer, as if Ashley just delivered a Nobel-winning speech. Diane Austin looks mildly horrified by the blatant lack of class, her lips pressing into a tight, thin line, while Charles simply stares at Ashley with cold indifference. Brandon stares down at his empty plate, twisting his linen napkin in his hands, completely mortified by his future bride's drunken, vindictive behavior. I do not react. I do not flush with embarrassment. I do not look away. I sit perfectly still, holding my glass of sparkling water, maintaining direct, unwavering eye contact with my sister. My complete lack of reaction visibly agitates her. Before the awkward silence can stretch any further, Thomas jumps out of his chair. He practically rips the microphone from Ashley's hand, desperate to capitalize on the moment and impress his wealthy future in-laws. "Let us give it up for my beautiful girls!" Thomas booms, clapping heavily into the microphone. He turns his attention directly to Charles Austin, puffing out his chest and adjusting his counterfeit designer suit jacket. You know, Charles, raising daughters in the business world is quite the challenge. Rebecca here, she built a nice little operation for herself. But she did not do it alone. I taught that girl everything she knows about corporate strategy. I gave her the foundation, the grit, the absolute financial genius required to survive and thrive in this brutal economy. I guided her every single step of the way. She owes her success entirely to the business principles I instilled in her. He smiles broadly, turning his pitch into a direct solicitation. In fact, Charles, that is exactly why I wanted to bring you into my new commercial real estate venture. I have the vision, the drive, the exact same strategy I used to build Rebecca's company. I just need a partner with your level of capital to get the first phase off the ground. I slowly take another sip of my sparkling water. The sheer audacity of his lie is almost breathtaking. He is standing in a room full of genuine multimillionaires claiming to be a financial genius, using my hard-earned success to validate his pathetic existence. I sit quietly, letting him spin his web of deceit as my mind flashes back to the absolute terrifying reality of his business principles. I remember being 14 years old, waking up at 3 in the morning to the sound of heavy diesel engines idling in our driveway. I remember peeking through my bedroom blinds and watching two repo men quietly hook up my father's luxury sedan and my mother's sports car to tow trucks, hauling them away into the cold darkness. The very next morning, Thomas forced us to tell the neighbors the cars were at a specialty detail shop across the state. I remember turning 19, trying to rent my first college apartment, and discovering that my father had stolen my social security number to open 3 separate credit cards in my name. He maxed them out instantly to pay his overdue country club fees, just so he could continue rubbing shoulders with men exactly like Charles Austin. I remember the paralyzing fear of finding foreclosure notices stuffed into the back of his desk drawer, the red ink threatening to render us homeless while he sipped expensive scotch at the golf course. I remember watching him file for bankruptcy not once but twice, bearing his massive crippling debts behind a pathetic facade of leased luxury watches, fake exotic vacations, and endless, exhausting lies. Every single milestone of my youth was overshadowed by the looming threat of financial ruin. He is a financial parasite, a man who destroys everything he touches to maintain an illusion of wealth. And right now, he is using this wedding and my company's pristine reputation to orchestrate his ultimate scam. He is actively leveraging the Austin family's wealth to pitch a completely fraudulent real estate scam to Brandon's father, hoping to use their capital to clear his hidden debts. Charles looks at Thomas, his expression completely blank, offering absolutely no encouragement, validation, or respect. The room falls quiet as Thomas hands the microphone back to the stand and returns to his seat, wiping a bead of nervous sweat from his forehead. It is the perfect moment. I set my glass of sparkling water down on the table. The soft clink of the glass against the wood draws every eye in the room toward me. I stand up slowly, smoothing the front of my emerald dress. I do not walk toward the microphone. I do not need it. My voice carries perfectly through the silent, tense room, ringing with absolute, unshakable authority. I would like to propose a toast as well. I announce, my tone dangerously smooth and perfectly calibrated. I look directly at my father, pinning him to his chair with my gaze. Ashley is right. I have learned so much about family loyalty this week, but more importantly, I have to agree with my father. He truly did teach me everything I know about business. He taught me the absolute importance of reading the fine print. He taught me to never trust a verbal promise. He taught me that loyalty is often just a mask for extortion. And most importantly, he taught me the true, undeniable value of financial creativity. I pick up my leather handbag from the empty chair beside me. I reach inside and pull out a thick, heavy manila folder. It is sealed with a bright red string tie. The entire room watches me in total silence as I walk slowly down the length of the dining table. My father's smug smile begins to waver, replaced by a creeping, instinctive dread. My mother's hands tighten around her napkin, her knuckles turning white. Ashley glares at me, her jaw clenched tight, realizing her triumphant moment has been completely hijacked. I ignore them all. I walk straight past my family, straight past Brandon and Diane, and stop directly beside Charles Austin's chair. I place the heavy sealed folder squarely on the pristine white tablecloth directly next to his dinner plate. Charles looks down at the folder, then looks up at me, his sharp eyes narrowing with intense, calculated curiosity. He is a man who recognizes a brutal corporate power play when he sees one. "What is this?" Charles asks, his deep voice breaking the heavy silence. I offer him a polite, razor-sharp smile. "That is a comprehensive portfolio of my father's financial creativity," I say, ensuring my voice is loud enough for every single person in the room to hear clearly. Inside that folder, you will find fully certified public records detailing his 2 previous bankruptcy filings. You will also find a highly detailed background check outlining over $400,000 in active, unsecured debt hidden beneath shell companies. And finally, you will find a complete fraud analysis of the commercial real estate venture he just pitched to you, proving that the properties he claims to hold options on do not actually exist. He is attempting to use your capital to erase his massive liabilities. I strongly suggest you read every single page before you even consider writing him a check. Diane Austin stops dead at the edge of the manicured lawn. Her styled hair remains motionless in the breeze, but her eyes widen in absolute horror. She looks at the barren expanse of the Emerald Conservatory. The imported silk carpets are gone. The massive floral arches are completely dismantled. The crystal chairs are loaded into my Lux Venue's trucks. In the center of this barren dirt patch stands Ashley. Her custom designer wedding gown is smeared with wet mud around the hem. She is shrieking at a team of my former catering staff, her face twisted into an ugly, furious mask as she demands they unpack the silver serving trays. Diane does not say a word to Ashley. She simply turns her cold, calculating gaze toward Thomas and Linda, who are practically hyperventilating near the entrance of the estate. Then Diane looks at her son. Brandon is staring at Ashley as if she is a total stranger. The illusion of the sweet, innocent bride is completely gone, replaced by a screaming, entitled nightmare standing in a mud puddle. Diane places a single firm hand on Brandon's shoulder. She tells him the wedding is over. She tells him that the Austin family does not associate with frauds, liars, or unhinged gold diggers. Brandon does not argue. He looks at my father, shaking his head in disgust, then turns his back on my sister. Ashley sees him turning away and lets out a guttural scream, abandoning her tirade against the catering crew. She lunges across the grass, grasping at Brandon's suit jacket, sobbing and begging him to stay. She screams that they can just force me to pay for everything, that I have millions of dollars that I owe her this wedding. Brandon peels her muddy fingers off his lapel with a look of total revulsion. He walks away, following his mother toward their waiting town car, leaving Ashley sobbing uncontrollably on the ruined lawn. Thomas watches the Austin town car speed down the long gravel driveway. He watches his fake commercial real estate merger, his ticket out of debt, and his social standing vanish into the morning mist. His face cycles from pale shock to a deep, mottled red. The veins in his neck bulge against his tight collar. He spins around, his bloodshot eyes locking directly onto me. I am standing near the edge of the patio, my posture relaxed, my hands folded neatly in front of me. I am perfectly calm, watching the inevitable consequences of his lifelong deceit finally crush him. Thomas loses his mind. He lets out a roar of primal rage and charges directly at me. He closes the distance between us in heavy strides, his fists clenched at his sides. He is breathing heavily, spit flying from his lips, as he screams that I have ruined his life, that I have destroyed his daughter's future, that I am a selfish monster who deserves to be entirely alone. as he charges, raising his hand. My mind flashes back to my teenage years. This is the exact same physical intimidation tactic he used to silence me when I was 16. I remember finding a stack of past due mortgage notices hidden in the kitchen pantry. When I confronted him, terrified that we were going to lose our home, he had backed me into a corner. He had towered over me, his face inches from mine, his fist raised exactly like it is now, screaming that I was a stupid, paranoid child who needed to learn her place. He had terrified me into absolute silence, forcing me to swallow my anxiety, while he continued to squander our family's financial security. He thinks that same tactic will work today. He thinks I am still that terrified 16-year-old pinned against the kitchen cabinets. He thinks his physical presence will force me to submit, apologize, and miraculously fix the catastrophe he created. He is catastrophically mistaken. I do not flinch. I do not take a single step backward. I stand my ground, my chin raised, watching his pathetic display with nothing but icy contempt. He never reaches me. Before Thomas can cross the final 5 feet between us, a wall of muscle intercepts him. My private security detail, led by a towering man named David, steps out from the shadows of the patio pillars. David does not hesitate. He steps directly into my father's path, raising a massive hand and shoving Thomas backward by the center of his chest. The force of the push sends my father stumbling awkwardly across the pavement. He trips over his own expensive leather shoes and crashes hard onto the stone patio, tearing the knee of his suit trousers. Linda screams, rushing forward to grab his arm, her manicured hands trembling violently as she realizes the danger of the situation. David stands between me and my parents, his posture rigid, his expression blank, silently daring my father to try that charge a second time. Thomas stays on the ground, breathing heavily, his chest heaving as he looks up at the security detail. The realization that he has absolutely no power here, no physical dominance, and no control over my actions finally sinks into his thick skull. He looks small, weak, and broken. He tries to muster a shred of his usual arrogant dignity, brushing the dirt from his torn trousers, but the facade is completely shattered. Linda is weeping openly now, clinging to his arm, realizing that their golden child is sobbing in the mud, and their financial savior has just physically repelled them. They are surrounded by the wreckage of their own making, and there is absolutely no one left to manipulate. The scene is perfectly set for the final act. I give David a brief nod. He steps to the side, allowing 2 men in business suits to step forward from the perimeter of the estate. They walk briskly across the patio, their expressions strictly professional. They are not security guards. They are process servers. The first man stops directly in front of my father, who is attempting to stand upright with my mother's help. Thomas Austin. The man asks, his voice carrying the flat, unmistakable tone of legal business. My father nods dumbly, too exhausted and confused to deny his identity. The man hands him a thick manila envelope. "You have been officially served," he states before stepping back. The second man steps toward my mother, handing her an identical envelope. "Linda Austin, you have also been served." My father rips open the envelope, his hands shaking violently as he pulls out the stack of legal documents. His eyes widen in absolute terror as he reads the bold print on the first page. It is a massive lawsuit for financial fraud. During the extensive audit of my company's early financial records, my legal team uncovered the deeply buried truth about my startup capital. Thomas had secretly forged my signature on a massive commercial business loan 7 years ago, using my burgeoning catering company as collateral to secure cash for his failing investments. He thought I would never find out. He thought he had covered his tracks perfectly. The lawsuit demands immediate restitution of the loan amount, plus 7 years of compounded interest, punitive damages, and formal criminal fraud charges. But that is not all. My mother pulls out a secondary document from her envelope. It is the formal demand letter for the $150,000 penalty. It outlines their direct, undeniable breach of the Lux Venues defamation and liability morality clause, triggered precisely by Ashley's defamatory social media video from the previous day. The legal trap I set in my executive suite has officially snapped shut. They owe me hundreds of thousands of dollars and they have absolutely zero legal recourse to fight it. Thomas drops the papers onto the stone patio as if they burn his hands. He looks at me, his face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing silently. He finally understands the depth of his catastrophic failure. He tried to extort me for $8,000 to fund his golden child's wedding, and in return, I have systematically dismantled his entire life. Ashley, having witnessed the exchange from the lawn, drags her heavy, mud-soaked dress across the grass. She points a shaking finger at me. "Just force my sister to pay you off." Ashley screams at our parents, her voice cracking into a hysterical shriek. She has millions of dollars sitting in her corporate bank accounts. Just make her pay for it. I step out from the shadows of the patio, pulling my phone from my clutch. I look at my sister then, at the two pathetic figures cowering on the stone floor. My millions aren't for gold diggers or frauds. I say, my voice ringing with absolute finality. I slowly turn my back on them, walking toward my waiting car, leaving my family to drown in the ruins of their own deception. The heavy door of my town car shuts with a solid, satisfying thud, instantly silencing the chaotic symphony of my family's absolute collapse. I lean back against the plush leather seat and instruct my driver to take me back to my office. Through the tinted window, I catch one final glimpse of the botanical estate patio. My father is kneeling on the stone, clutching the legal documents that will ultimately send him to federal prison. My mother is sobbing onto his torn shoulder. Ashley is standing ankle-deep in the mud, screaming wildly at the empty air, her ruined designer gown hanging off her like a dirty rag. I do not feel a single ounce of pity. I feel an overwhelming, profound sense of liberation. The invisible chains of familial obligation have been completely severed, sliced apart by the sharp edge of the truth. I expect my sister to retreat into the shadows to lick her wounds. I expect her to realize that she has absolutely zero leverage left. But a narcissist deprived of their audience is a highly dangerous creature. Ashley cannot accept a silent defeat. She is entirely incapable of admitting fault, so she immediately seeks out the one thing that has always validated her toxic behavior: public sympathy. 3 days later, I am sitting in my corporate boardroom, reviewing expansion blueprints, when my assistant tentatively knocks on the door. She steps inside holding a tablet with a deeply concerned expression. She tells me I need to turn on the local morning news broadcast. I press a button on the conference table console, bringing the large monitor to life. There is my sister sitting on a plush studio sofa opposite a local lifestyle reporter, known for sensationalizing high society gossip. Ashley is wearing a modest pale pink sweater. Her makeup is meticulously applied to make her look exhausted and fragile. She holds a crumpled tissue in her hand, dabbing at her dry eyes as the camera zooms in tight on her face. "It has been the most traumatic week of my entire life," Ashley tells the reporter, her lower lip trembling with practiced perfection. "I was supposed to marry the man of my dreams. We were so deeply in love. But my older sister, Rebecca, she has always been so incredibly jealous of me. She recently came into a massive amount of corporate wealth, and she used those millions to manipulate my fiancé's family. She bought them off. She literally paid them to cancel the wedding and stole Brandon away from me, just to prove she had the power to ruin my happiness." The reporter gasps softly, placing a comforting hand on Ashley's knee. She asks how a sister could be so cruel. Ashley lets out a pathetic, breathy sob. "She just hates seeing anyone else happy," Ashley whispers directly into the camera. "She used her money to destroy our family out of pure spite. I am just a normal girl who wanted a fairy tale wedding, and my billionaire sister crushed it because she is miserable and alone." I watch the broadcast end. My assistant looks at me, waiting for my orders. She asks if I want to call our legal team to draft an immediate cease and desist order. I shake my head, taking a slow sip of my coffee. I tell her to do absolutely nothing. I do not need to lift a single finger to destroy Ashley's pathetic smear campaign. I know exactly who is watching this broadcast alongside me. Diane Austen. The Austen family does not tolerate public embarrassment. They have spent decades building a pristine, untouchable reputation in the city's upper echelon. Charles and Diane are ruthlessly protective of their social standing. Hearing a local nobody claim on live television that their son was bought off by a caterer is the ultimate insult to their pride. Ashley fundamentally misunderstood her adversary. She thought she was picking a fight with the sister she had bullied her entire life. She did not realize she had just declared war on the most vicious, well-connected family in the state. I do not have to wait very long for the retaliation. Diane Austen unleashes her elite public relations hounds with the speed and precision of a military strike. The Austens possess an army of fixers, lawyers, and media contacts who specialize in burying corporate scandals and annihilating reputations. Less than 4 hours after Ashley's tearful morning interview, the local media landscape completely shifts. Every major news outlet, gossip blog, and high society newsletter simultaneously receives a massive anonymous data dump. The Austen PR machine operates with ruthless efficiency. The first item to hit the internet is the audio recording I captured in the hallway of the country club. My phone recorded every single word of Brandon and Ashley's vicious breakup. The crystal-clear audio file plays on continuous loop across social media platforms. The entire city hears Brandon Austen's disgusted voice echoing through their speakers. "I do not love you," Brandon says on the recording. "I only proposed because your father promised my father a massive commercial real estate merger. You are nothing but a business transaction that fell through." And then the true nail in the coffin plays. The city hears the real Ashley. They hear her drop the sweet innocent victim routine. They hear her screeching like a feral animal. "Just force my sister to pay you off. She has millions," she screams on the recording. "Just make her pay for it." The audio obliterates her innocent bride narrative instantly. She is exposed to the entire world, not as a heartbroken victim, but as a calculated, greedy gold digger who viewed her own sister strictly as an automated teller machine. The comment sections on her morning interview video turn into an absolute bloodbath. Viewers who were expressing deep sympathy just hours earlier are now ruthlessly mocking her greed. But Diane Austen's PR team is not finished. They ensure the destruction is absolute. The next document leaked to the press is a high-resolution scan of the original $8,000 seating fee invoice that Thomas and Linda tried to force me to pay. The invoice explicitly details the charge for allowing the sister of the bride to sit at a table within the same room as the Austen family. It is a stunning display of petty, delusional arrogance. The high society circles of our city are ruthless, but they pride themselves on quiet elegance. The sheer tackiness of charging a family member for a dinner seat makes Thomas and Linda the laughingstock of the entire country club circuit. The final blow lands just before the evening news cycle begins. The Austen fixers release the comprehensive background check on Thomas's finances. The certified public records of his 2 previous bankruptcies are blasted across the screens of every wealthy investor in the state. The details of his $400,000 in active unsecured debt are laid bare for all to see. The fraudulent commercial real estate portfolio he tried to pitch to Charles Austen is meticulously debunked by financial experts on live television. They prove that the properties he claimed to own do not exist. He is exposed as a serial scam artist who uses leased luxury cars and fake designer suits to prey on legitimate businessmen. The resulting fallout is absolutely spectacular. The social execution of Thomas and Linda is swift and merciless. The board of directors at their beloved country club convenes an emergency session that very same evening. Citing severe violations of their membership morality clause and the extreme public embarrassment brought upon the club, Thomas and Linda's membership is permanently revoked. They are banned from stepping foot on the property. Their carefully curated social circle abandons them instantly. The wealthy friends my mother spent decades trying to impress stop answering her phone calls. The politicians my father claimed to know deny ever meeting him. They become absolute pariahs in their own community. Nobody wants to be associated with a family of exposed frauds and gold diggers. The social isolation is only the beginning of their nightmare. The financial reality of their situation rapidly crushes them. They are currently facing my corporate lawsuit for the $150,000 morality clause breach. They are also facing my personal lawsuit for the fraudulent commercial business loan my father forged in my name 7 years ago. They have absolutely zero liquid capital to hire a competent defense attorney. My father's credit is completely destroyed, meaning he cannot take out another loan to cover his mounting legal fees. For years, my parents prioritized maintaining the illusion of wealth over their own daughter's well-being. They sacrificed my happiness, my security, and my mental health to fund their pathetic charade. Now the bill for that charade has finally come due. With no fake real estate merger to bail them out and no wealthy daughter left to extort, they run completely out of options. They are forced to list their beloved suburban mansion for sale. It is the house where I grew up, the house where I learned that conditional love always carries a heavy price tag. They list it as a short sale, desperate to liquidate the asset before the bank initiates formal foreclosure proceedings. A week later, I decide to take a drive. I steer my car into their manicured suburban neighborhood, rolling slowly past the perfectly trimmed hedges and expansive driveways. I pull over to the curb across the street from my childhood home. I sit in the driver's seat and look at the sprawling property. I remember the exact day they threw me out. I remember packing my meager belongings into trash bags while my father watched television in the living room. I remember the profound sense of worthlessness that suffocated me as I drove away to my moldy studio apartment. I look at the front lawn now. A large wooden sign has been hammered deep into the green grass. The bright red letters spell out the words, "For sale." Below that, an additional banner reads, "Foreclosure pending." I watch the front door of the mansion open. Thomas walks out carrying a heavy cardboard moving box. He looks completely defeated. His shoulders slumped. His counterfeit designer suit replaced by cheap sweatpants. Linda follows him, her arms full of framed photographs, her face devoid of any makeup. They load the boxes into a rented moving truck parked in the driveway. Ashley is nowhere to be seen, likely having abandoned them the moment the money ran dry, completely unwilling to stick around for the hard work of packing. I sit in my car and watch them struggle with the heavy boxes. I do not feel a desire to roll down my window and gloat. I do not feel the need to honk my horn or draw attention to my presence. The universe has perfectly balanced the scales without any further intervention from me. My millions aren't for gold diggers or frauds. I speak the words aloud in the quiet cabin of my car, a final affirmation of the boundary I have drawn. I shift my car into drive. I pull away from the curb, leaving the neighborhood, the mansion, and my toxic family in the rearview mirror, forever. The heavy oak doors of the county civil courthouse stood before me, a stark, imposing contrast to the sleek glass and steel of my corporate headquarters. Exactly 6 months had passed since I sat in my car and watched my parents pack their ruined lives into a rented moving truck. 6 months of absolute blissful silence, unbroken by a single text message, email, or manipulative phone call. I walked through the metal detectors, flanked by my lead corporate attorney, Marcus, and the ever-present shadow of my head of security, David. The polished marble floors echoed with the sharp, rhythmic click of my black stiletto heels. I was dressed for a corporate execution, wearing a meticulously tailored charcoal suit that commanded respect and projected absolute, unyielding authority. As we rounded the corner toward courtroom 4B, I saw them. The physical transformation was so severe that for a fraction of a second, I almost did not recognize the three people huddled together on the wooden bench outside the double doors. The Austin family's signature arrogance had been entirely scrubbed away by 6 months of grinding poverty and insurmountable legal stress. Thomas, a man who used to spend thousands of dollars on custom Italian tailoring to project the illusion of extreme wealth, was wearing an ill-fitting off-the-rack suit purchased from a discount bin. The cheap fabric bunched awkwardly at his shoulders, and his once perfectly styled hair was thinning gray and unkempt. Linda sat beside him, nervously picking at her cuticles. She wore no makeup, revealing exhausted lines etched into her pale face. Her expensive blonde extensions were gone, replaced by a dull, brassy bob. But it was Ashley who looked the most unrecognizable. The demanding, entitled bride who had screamed at me in the mud was entirely gone. She wore a faded gray cardigan and cheap wrinkled slacks, her posture slumped, her eyes darting nervously around the busy corridor. The harsh reality of working a minimum wage retail job to survive had entirely shattered her delusions of grandeur. They looked haggard, broken, and entirely pathetic. The moment they saw me approaching, the dynamic shifted. Linda shot up from the wooden bench, her eyes welling with instant manufactured tears. She practically tripped over her own feet as she rushed forward, stopping just short of David's massive frame as he smoothly stepped between us. She clasped her hands together, pressing them to her chest in absolute theatrical desperation. "Rebecca, my sweet girl, please!" Linda sobbed, her voice echoing loudly in the cavernous hallway, drawing the attention of passing lawyers. "You have to drop this. Please, I am begging you on my hands and knees. Look at us. We lost the house. Your father works night shifts at a warehouse. Ashley can barely feed herself. We have absolutely nothing left. Blood is thicker than water, Rebecca. You cannot do this to your own family." I stopped walking. I did not ask David to step aside. I simply stared at the woman who had birthed me, my expression entirely devoid of emotion. I listened to the words, "sweet girl," fall from her trembling lips, and a wave of cold, clinical clarity washed over me. I remembered exactly what those words meant in the Austin household. I remembered being 17 years old, standing in the kitchen after working a grueling 40-hour week at my summer job. I remembered Linda smiling warmly, calling me her sweet girl, right before demanding I hand over my entire paycheck to cover the cost of Ashley's emergency ski trip with her wealthy friends. I remembered being 22, desperate for a reliable car, when Thomas called me his sweet girl, just before forging my signature on a massive business loan that nearly destroyed my credit. They never used terms of endearment to express genuine love or maternal care. They used them as verbal crowbars, prying open my emotional defenses to extract whatever financial resources they needed to maintain their fraudulent lifestyle. I looked down at Linda's shaking hands. "You are confused, Linda," I stated, my voice echoing with icy corporate precision. "I am not your sweet girl. I am the plaintiff. And you are the defendants. I suggest you save your tears for the judge." I stepped around her, pulling open the heavy wooden doors of the courtroom and taking my designated seat at the plaintiff's table. Marcus opened his briefcase, organizing the towering stacks of forensic accounting reports, contract agreements, and certified bank statements that would serve as the final nails in their financial coffin. A few moments later, Thomas, Linda, and Ashley filed into the room, taking their seats at the defense table. They did not have an attorney. The massive retainer fees required to defend against a corporate fraud lawsuit had been entirely out of their reach. Thomas was attempting to represent them pro se, a foolish, arrogant decision that only highlighted his desperate delusion. The judge, an older, no-nonsense woman named Judge Harrison, took the bench and immediately called the court to order. She looked down at Thomas with an expression of thinly veiled exhaustion, clearly already tired of his amateur legal posturing. The proceedings began, and Thomas immediately tried to control the narrative. He stood up, puffing out his chest, attempting to use the same loud, blustering intimidation tactics that had worked so well in country club dining rooms. He launched into a rambling, highly emotional speech about family misunderstandings, claiming that the forged business loan was simply a father acting as a financial proxy for his daughter, and that the venue cancellation penalty was a baseless extortion attempt by a vindictive, jealous child. Judge Harrison slammed her wooden gavel down the sharp crack, cutting him off mid-sentence. "Mr. Austin," she warned sharply, adjusting her glasses, "this is a court of law, not a daytime television talk show. You will confine your remarks strictly to the legal facts of the case, or I will hold you in contempt and have the bailiff remove you from my courtroom." Thomas stammered, his face flushing a deep, embarrassed red, as he sat back down, realizing his manipulation tactics were utterly useless here. Marcus stood up and systematically dismantled their entire defense in less than 20 minutes. He called me to the stand. I walked to the witness box, swore the oath, and sat down, smoothing my suit jacket. I looked directly at my family as I delivered my testimony. I did not raise my voice. I did not display a single ounce of anger, sorrow, or vindictiveness. I delivered the facts with cold, unyielding corporate precision. I detailed the exact date and time I discovered the forged commercial loan. I verified the forensic handwriting analysis that proved Thomas had copied my signature to secure $400,000 against my company's assets. I walked the judge through the explicit legally binding terms of the Emerald Conservatory lease agreement. I explained the morality and defamation clause in extensive detail, and then Marcus played the video of Ashley screaming hysterical defamatory lies about my business on social media. The video echoed through the silent courtroom, Ashley's shrill, entitled voice contrasting sharply with the miserable, slumped figure currently sitting at the defense table. I explained the precise mathematical calculation of the $150,000 breach of contract penalty, providing stamped invoices to prove damages. As I spoke, I watched the last remaining shreds of my father's ego completely disintegrate. He sat frozen in his chair, staring blankly at the polished wood of the defense table, completely unable to meet my eyes. He could not yell. He could not threaten me. He could not raise his fist and force me into submission. He was trapped in a room where facts, evidence, and the law stripped away every single one of his abusive control mechanisms. I finished my testimony and stepped down from the stand, returning to my seat beside Marcus. Judge Harrison did not take long to deliberate. She looked down at the massive stack of irrefutable evidence my legal team had provided, turning the final pages with a grim expression. She looked at Thomas, Linda, and Ashley with absolute judicial disgust. The evidence presented in this court today outlines a shocking systemic pattern of financial abuse, identity theft, and blatant contract violation. Judge Harrison stated, her voice ringing with absolute finality. Mr. Austin, your attempt to categorize deliberate corporate fraud as a simple family misunderstanding is frankly an insult to the intelligence of this court. She slammed her gavel down with a resounding crack. I find fully in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. I hereby order Thomas and Linda Austin to pay full restitution of the forged loan amount, including 7 years of compounded interest and punitive damages. Furthermore, I find the defendants fully liable for the $150,000 penalty for direct breach of the venue contract. Because the defendants have demonstrated a clear inability to manage their finances legally and possess no liquid capital to satisfy this judgment, I am ordering the maximum allowable garnishment of all future wages for Thomas, Linda, and Ashley Austin until the debt is completely satisfied in full. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the defense table. Linda buried her face in her hands, letting out a hollow, broken wail that echoed through the room. Ashley stared blankly at the back wall, realizing that a massive percentage of every minimum wage paycheck she earned for the next decade would be heavily siphoned off to pay her older sister. Thomas just sat there, his mouth hanging slightly open, utterly destroyed. They were legally bound to their poverty. I did not wait for the court to adjourn formally. I stood up, buttoned my suit jacket, and walked toward the heavy wooden doors. I pushed them open and stepped out into the bright sunlit hallway of the courthouse. I heard the frantic scramble of footsteps behind me. Thomas burst through the doors, his face red, his eyes wide with a frantic, animalistic panic. He realized that the wage garnishment meant they would never recover. They were trapped in a financial prison of their own making for the rest of their natural lives. "Rebecca, wait!" Thomas screamed, his voice cracking as he lunged forward, stopping just short of my security detail. "You cannot do this. We are your blood." I did not stop walking. I did not break my stride. I kept my eyes focused straight ahead, my heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. "Blood is what leeches drain," I replied, my voice echoing sharply down the long, empty corridor. "I am no longer the host. The heavy courthouse doors swung shut behind me, completely cutting off the sound of my father's desperate, pathetic screaming. I stepped out into the crisp, bright afternoon air, taking a deep, cleansing breath that filled my lungs with absolute freedom. The oppressive weight that had sat squarely on my chest for my entire life was entirely gone. I walked down the marble steps with Marcus and David, the bright sunlight warming my face. I did not look back. There was absolutely nothing left to look back at. Exactly 1 year after that definitive court ruling, the Emerald Conservatory is practically glowing against the dark velvet canvas of the night sky. The sprawling botanical estate, the exact venue where Ashley's fraudulent fairy tale violently unraveled into a muddy, screaming catastrophe, is currently hosting the most anticipated philanthropic event of the season. I stand near the grand entrance of the main glass atrium, watching hundreds of guests mingle beneath the towering illuminated orchids and sweeping willow branches. The atmosphere is electric, vibrating with genuine joy and profound purpose. There are no imported silk carpets rolled up in haste, no dismantled floral arches, and absolutely no shrieking brides demanding the impossible from a catering staff. Instead, the conservatory is filled with the soft, elegant hum of a live string quartet and the warm, melodic sound of authentic laughter. Tonight is my inaugural charity gala. I spent the last 12 months quietly establishing a massive privately funded foundation explicitly designed to provide immediate legal and financial support for victims of familial and financial abuse. I channeled a significant portion of my corporate profits into creating a safety net for people who are trapped in the exact same toxic cycles I narrowly escaped. I built an organization that deploys aggressive legal teams, forensic accountants, and emergency housing resources to individuals whose identities have been stolen by their own parents or whose finances have been maliciously leveraged by manipulative siblings. We provide the ammunition they need to fight back against the people who use bloodlines as a weapon of extortion. The turnout for the gala is staggering. The city's true elite, the genuine philanthropists, industry leaders, and tech innovators have rallied around the cause with overwhelming generosity. We have already surpassed our initial fundraising goal by $3 million, and the silent auction has not even officially closed. I walk through the crowded atrium exchanging warm smiles and firm handshakes with my guests. I am not hiding in the shadows. I am not playing the role of the invisible, obedient servant, desperately hoping to avoid my mother's harsh criticism or my father's booming dismissive insults. I am the host. I am the architect of this incredible night, and I am entirely surrounded by people who value my mind, my drive, and my integrity. I feel a gentle, reassuring hand rest squarely on my lower back. I turn and look up into the warm, intelligent eyes of Julian. We met 8 months ago during a complex commercial real estate acquisition, long after the dust from the Austin family implosion had settled. Julian is a highly successful architect who specializes in sustainable urban development. He is brilliant, incredibly grounded, and completely unimpressed by the superficial trappings of high society. He does not care about country club memberships or designer labels. He cares about building things that last. He looks at me with a level of profound, unconditional respect that I never experienced during my entire childhood. He values my relentless work ethic, challenges my ideas during late-night strategy sessions, and celebrates my victories without a single ounce of jealousy. "You threw an incredible party," Rebecca Julian says, his voice cutting clearly through the ambient noise of the gala. He hands me a delicate crystal flute filled with perfectly chilled vintage champagne. The board members are absolutely thrilled. Marcus just told me the final donation tally from the silent auction. "You are going to change a lot of lives tonight." I take the champagne flute, my fingers brushing gently against his. "We did this together," I remind him, acknowledging the countless hours he spent helping me redesign the conservatory's layout to maximize the event space. I look around the room, taking in the faces of the people who comprise my actual family. Marcus is standing near the auction tables laughing warmly with a group of pro bono attorneys who work for the foundation. David, my head of security, is stationed discreetly near the grand exit, giving me a subtle, respectful nod as he scans the room. My corporate executives, the brilliant men and women who helped me build my catering empire from the ground up, are celebrating at a reserved table near the dance floor. This is my chosen family. They are a network of peers, mentors, and partners, built entirely on a foundation of mutual respect, brutal honesty, and unwavering support. They do not demand my money to validate their love. They do not use guilt to manipulate my decisions. They celebrate my independence. For 30 years, I sat at my parents' dining room table, completely surrounded by biological relatives, yet I felt suffocated by a profound, agonizing isolation. I was nothing more than an asset to be managed, a bank account to be drained, a convenient scapegoat for their endless failures. Tonight, standing in a room filled with hundreds of people, I feel an overwhelming sense of belonging. The Austen family is completely absent from my reality, and their absence is the greatest gift I have ever received. I excuse myself from the main floor, leaving Julian to entertain a group of potential donors. I navigate through the glass corridors of the conservatory, moving away from the music and the bright lights. I push open a set of heavy glass doors and step out onto the expansive, secluded terrace that overlooks the estate's private lake. The cool night air washes over me, carrying the crisp, earthy scent of pine and fresh water. The terrace is quiet, illuminated only by the soft glow of a massive circular stone fire pit blazing in the center of the patio. The flames crackle and dance, casting warm, flickering shadows across the smooth concrete. I walk over to the edge of the stone fire pit, the heat radiating pleasantly against the evening chill. I take a slow, deliberate sip of my vintage champagne. The crisp, complex flavors dance across my palate. I set the crystal flute down on the wide stone ledge of the fire pit. I reach into the concealed side pocket of my emerald dress. My fingers brush against a small, stiff piece of paper. I pull it out, holding it up in the flickering orange light of the flames. It is the invoice. The ridiculous, insulting $8,000 seating fee invoice that my parents slammed onto my desk all those months ago. I had kept the 4 torn pieces, carefully sliding them into a clear plastic sleeve, carrying them with me, not as a burden, but as a deeply personal reminder. The printed numbers detailing the extortionate cost of simply sitting in the same room as my family stare back at me. I trace the jagged, torn edge of the paper with my thumb. I remember the paralyzing fear I used to feel whenever my father raised his voice. I remember the deep, agonizing shame that washed over me every time my mother compared me to Ashley. I remember the countless nights I spent staring at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, wondering what was fundamentally wrong with me, wondering why I was so incapable of earning the love of the people who were supposed to protect me. I spent decades internalizing their toxic narrative, allowing them to convince me that I was a difficult, unlovable disappointment who owed them endless financial servitude just to justify my existence. I look down at the roaring flames of the fire pit. I slide the 4 torn pieces of the invoice out of the plastic sleeve. I hold the thick paper between my thumb and forefinger, suspending it directly over the open fire. I realize now that they were never disappointed in me. They were absolutely terrified of me. They were terrified of my independence, my intelligence, and my refusal to participate in their pathetic, fraudulent reality. They used the illusion of family loyalty as a cage, desperately trying to keep me trapped, because they knew that without my resources, their entire empire of lies would instantly collapse. The moment I stopped playing their game, the moment I demanded accountability, the cage completely shattered. I open my fingers. I drop the pieces of the invoice into the fire pit. The heavy paper flutters downward, landing directly onto the glowing white-hot coals. The edges of the paper instantly curl and blacken. A bright ribbon of orange flame catches the center of the invoice, consuming the ink, the numbers, and the Austen family name. I stand completely still, watching the fire devour the last physical tether to my past. The paper disintegrates rapidly, turning into brittle glowing ash before being swept up by the thermal draft and dissolving completely into the dark night sky. I pick up my champagne flute from the stone ledge. I look out over the immaculate grounds of my estate, listening to the faint, joyful music drifting out from the conservatory. My businesses are thriving. My foundation is actively destroying the systems of financial abuse that nearly ruined my life. I am standing in a fortress of my own making, completely untouchable, surrounded by a life I built with my own two hands. I take another sip of my champagne, a genuine radiant smile spreading across my face. I look at the empty space in the fire pit where the invoice used to be. My parents had weaponized that piece of paper, using it as a threat to permanently cut me out of their lives if I did not submit to their extortion. They thought an $8,000 bill would break my spirit. They thought the threat of losing their toxic conditional love would force me to surrender. As I stand in the cool night air, breathing in the absolute freedom of my beautifully reclaimed life, I realize the profound, hilarious truth of that ultimatum. $8,000 was not a punishment. It was a bargain. It was the absolute cheapest price I could have ever possibly paid to permanently cut the toxicity out of my life. I raise my crystal flute toward the starry sky, offering a silent, triumphant toast to the empty night. The Austen family tried to bury me beneath the weight of their impossible expectations, but they entirely forgot that I was the one who owned the ground they were standing on. I drain the last drop of champagne, turn my back on the fire, and walk confidently back inside to rejoin the beautiful, brilliant family I chose for myself. Rebecca's journey teaches us a profound and highly difficult truth. Biological relation is not a free pass for systematic abuse, emotional manipulation, or financial extortion. For far too long, society has aggressively pushed the toxic narrative that we must forgive and endure abusive family members simply because we happen to share the same DNA. But as Rebecca discovered through her painful ordeal, true family is not defined by biology. It is entirely defined by mutual respect, unconditional support, and genuine care. When you are raised in a deeply toxic environment, you are systematically conditioned to believe that you are the problem. You are taught to internalize their relentless failures and sacrifice your own happiness to maintain a comfortable, fraudulent illusion for everyone else. Breaking free from that deeply ingrained vicious cycle requires immense courage. It means firmly standing your ground, setting unbreakable boundaries, and being absolutely willing to walk away from the only family you have ever known. However, the ultimate payoff for that difficult choice is absolute profound liberation. By surgically cutting the leeches out of her life, Rebecca did not just save her hard-earned corporate empire, she created the necessary space to welcome a chosen family people who valued her brilliant mind, celebrated her victories, and loved her without hidden agendas or heavy price tags. Sometimes the most empowering thing you can do is let the bridge burn and use the light of the flames to guide your way forward. Share your own story in the comments below about how you found the strength to walk away from toxicity and set permanent boundaries to protect your peace. If Rebecca's journey to freedom resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more empowering stories of resilience, justice, and reclaiming your life. Remember, your peace is priceless, and you never owe anyone your happiness.